Chapter 51. There were tens of thousands of students practicing their solo battles on the sector championships platform every second of the day. Therefore, as a newcomer, no one had applied to watch the match between Shadow X and Feng right now. Moreover, since they were newly registered accounts, the to's followed sections were both blank, so no one could know about their match in time. Those who posted about the streaking incident on the forum's front page would not follow Shadow X. That was just a form of entertainment they happened to encounter after their intense training. Meanwhile, those who criticized Shadow X would not follow him either, because that would make them feel humiliated. This also caused them to miss a great opportunity. Both sides agreed to enter the individual battlefield after the match. After pressing start, Feng did not move. After all, the opponent was only a rank B genetic student from a non-military academy. If he made the first move, it would feel like he was bullying the weak. Sillin also knew what the opponent was thinking, so he made the first move. A white shadow flashed over. For normal people, it might be very fast, but for Feng, it was just average. Therefore, while Feng raised his hand to block the attack, he was also distracted to evaluate the opponent's posture. Not bad. While Feng was thinking, he realized that his arm was somehow shaken away a little when he was about to block the opponent. It was precisely this gap that allowed the opponent's hand to cleverly pass through the gap and attack him twice as fast as before. Bang! Feng took a few steps back from the attack. Sillin evaluated inwardly. As expected of a military academy. If it was anyone else, they would have been sent flying, but the one in front of him only took a few steps back. His physique was very strong, and his reaction was also very fast. Although he could not avoid this attack due to his distraction, the bones and muscles in Feng's chest were all in a highly defensive state the moment Sillin attacked, reducing the attack power of this attack. Moreover, even if Sillin took the opportunity to launch a combo attack while Feng was retreating, Feng believed that he was already prepared. After Feng stood still and looked at this guy who looked like a generic robot, he suddenly felt a little hot on his face. He was actually beaten back by a rank B genetic newbie who was not from a military academy. Moreover, seeing that the opponent did not come up but stood there quietly as if waiting for him to recover, Feng felt a little angry. He had let his guard down. Before the opening of the sector championships platform, the instructors had told them not to look down on non-military academies. There were plenty of crouching tigers and hidden dragons there, and it all depended on whether or not you could encounter them. He didn't expect to meet such a person as soon as he registered. There was anger, but Feng's fighting spirit was even stronger in his heart. He got into a defensive stance and signaled his opponent to attack. Seeing that Feng was ready, and he wasn't distracted this time, Sillin also increased his strength. Sillin's moves seemed to be light, but when he was close to Sillin, he suddenly accelerated and changed his moves erratically. It was difficult for Feng to judge Sillin's intention in that instant. Besides, Sillin's moves were secretly powerful. One blow could make Feng retreat a few steps. The more times he was repelled, the more steps Feng retreated. When Feng was beaten back for the 5th time, he also felt that something was wrong. The other party seemed to have been testing him. To put it bluntly, they were playing. A surge of anger rushed up, and Feng didn't care so much anymore. Let's fight then. It's not my style to hide. This time, Feng didn't defend and took the initiative to attack. At the same time, in a certain dormitory in the 3rd Military Academy, 3 people exited from battle mode after ending their own battles. As expected, we can only find people from the military academies to fight. Those people in Sector B are too weak. One person complained. You're still looking for people in Sector B? Leave those to the first years. We can only find our own kind. Like me, I've been picking people from the 1st and 4th military academies. The 1st military academy ranked 2nd in the sector championship last year, the 3rd military academy was still ranked 3rd, and the 4th military academy was the champion. As for the 2nd military academy, because they ranked last among the 4 military academies, they were laughed at by the other military academies last year. Oh right, that guy from the first years should have registered too, right? You mean that Fong Faradin? The 3rd Military Academy's first-year Faradin was ranked 5th in terms of individual combat strength. The students called him Fong. However, he seemed to have been sent on some mission by the instructors a few days ago. There was no news about Faradin a few days before the opening of the Sector Championships platform. Do you know what his registered name is? Look it up. Just search for Fong. He should be using this nickname. There really is one. He just registered today, and the information shows that he's from our 3rd Military Academy. But he's currently in a match. Match? The rest of the people in the dormitory swarmed over. Most of the military academies were dormitories with 4 to a dozen people. This dormitory alone had 8 people. The 8 of them gathered together and discussed. The opponent is actually from 7 Lights, and he's just a rank B genotype no less. With Faradin's strength, why would he bully someone from 7 Lights? It's already been 16 minutes, and it's not over yet. Faradin is probably going easy on him. He's a newbie after all. While they were talking, the screen showed that the match had ended. It's over. I told you that Faradin kid, He lost. How is that possible? Fong's battle status was shockingly displayed as 1 loss, while Shadow X's was displayed as 1 win. After a moment of silence, someone spoke up. This Fong isn't that Fong, is he? They were silent. According to the information, it should be Faradin, but the result of this match was too strange. Wait, let me ask. One of them opened the 3rd Military Academy's in-school chat software. Right now, in one of the 3rd Military Academy's dormitories. Faradin sat there drenched in sweat. Both his arms were trembling, and he was panting heavily. The rest of the people in the dormitory were shocked by Faradin's appearance, but when they saw Fong's battle situation on the screen, it was as if they had seen a ghost. Faradin felt the throbbing pain in his muscles, and the sensors clearly transmitted the pain to him. Shadow X was practically using the entanglement formula earlier, pestering him and continuously increasing his strength until he finally forced his own fighting spirit to the point where it turned into killing intent. Faradin held his head with his hands. The sweat on his forehead kept dripping down when he thought of that moment. Shadow X looked like a generic robot, but at that moment, he looked like a demon king. If this was a real battle, Faradin was certain that he would be dead already. Completely and utterly dead, and his arms would be broken into pieces. After sorting out his thoughts, Faradin took a deep breath and moved his slightly stiff arms a little. Faradin, that's Shadow X, very strong. That guy is very strong. Faradin sighed. Then, he stood up and took his communicator to the balcony. After Faradin walked out, the few people in the room exchanged glances with each other. There really weren't many people of the same age who could be evaluated as very strong by Faradin. Therefore, they logged into the Sector Championship platform, searched for Shadow X, and added him as their followers. When the people in the upper-grade dormitory saw that there was no response from the in-school chat loudspeaker, they were guessing the reason. Then, someone shouted, someone added him as their follower. The number of people following Shadow X was displayed as 5. When they clicked on it, all 5 of them were freshmen from the 3rd Military Academy. 5 minutes later, Fong focused on Shadow X. The in-school loudspeaker also played Faradin's reply, Fong, it's me. Shadow X is very strong. Faradin did not become depressed just because he lost his first battle on the Sector Championship platform. On the contrary, he was very excited right now, and did not deliberately hide his loss to Shadow X. He had told the instructor about this just now, and the instructor had analyzed the reason for it. Moreover, it was very beneficial for Faradin to find his own shortcomings and inadequacies. Every time he came into contact with a new fighting style, it was the best opportunity to improve himself. Shadow X's fighting style was undoubtedly a very good example. Faradin's reply caused the upper-grade dormitories to boil with excitement. Therefore, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, This was also the reason why the generic robot, Shadow X, had attracted the attention of tens of thousands of people on the first day. Moreover, the people who were paying attention to him were all the students of the 3rd Military Academy. Chapter 52. Silen had frequently received challenge requests from military academy students after the Fang's battle, but he only accepted one challenge every day because he didn't have that much time. Although the sector championship was a relatively important competition to many people, it was not even comparable to a tiny spare part to his mentor Mo Heng. Other than Mo Heng, there were also some people like Ci Jincheng and Lung who did not place much importance on the sector championship. Ci Jincheng had gone on a business trip to the communication base at a nearby asteroid, while Lung had gone to manage his business. Some of Planet 7 Light's supplies came from Andryra's family, and because the sector championship was approaching, the demand for certain items had begun to skyrocket. More than half of the necessities such as microcomputers and sensors were supplied by Andryra, and then 7 Lights would sell them to the students. Lung was probably collecting money even in his dreams right now. The sector championship was nothing but a money-making tool to him. During the first 3 days after he registered on the sector championship platform, every time Silen logged on, he would discover a huge pile of challenge requests in his inbox, and all of them were from the military academies. The 3rd Military Academy was the only one on the first day, but by the second day, the other 3 military academies had jumped out as well. Silen only picked a random person to fight, slept until the next day after the battle, and then went to the research division to complete Mo Heng's assignment. It was only during these 3 days that Silen fought on the sector championship platform, and on the 4th day, Silen was ordered by Mo Heng to stay at the research division to complete a large mechanical assembly. It would probably take a few days. In Mo Heng's words, "Isn't it just a warm-up before the match? Why are you messing around with those people? Hurry up and get down to business." This was one of the rare tactful words from Sir Mo. If he was a little more direct, those hot-blooded students fighting passionately on the sector championship platform would probably bang their heads against a wall and die. Because once, Silen heard Mo Heng mutter, "No matter how hard I work, I'm still only number 5, just like that, Silen temporarily left the sector championship platform and threw himself wholeheartedly into Mo Heng's great mechanical plan. In other words, it had only been 3 days since Silen logged onto the sector championship's platform. He had challenged 1 person and accepted 2 challenges. In total, he had 3 matches, and his record was 3 wins and 0 losses. 3 wins and 0 losses. There was nothing special about him just by looking at his battle record. There were plenty of people with over 100 wins and 0 losses on the sector championship platform, but what was special was that there were 2 special characters among the 3 people Silen had fought. One was the first person he had challenged in the 3rd Military Academy who was ranked 5th in terms of individual combat strength, Faradin, ID Tusk. The other was the fellow from the 4th Military Academy with the ID, Invincible Champion, whom Silen had randomly drawn. He wasn't a new student. It was precisely because of these 2 that the number of people from the 3rd and 4th Military Academies who challenged Silen in the following period of time was exceptionally high. Of course, Silen did not know about these recent events, at least. When he was assembling his machinery, he did not have the time to think about the sector championship. Silen was not currently working in his own workshop, but in Mo Heng's large workshop. At this moment, Silen was staring blankly at the piles of sorted parts all by himself. So many. Mo Heng was sitting leisurely on a chair not too far away, his legs propped up on the table, and he picked up a cup of tea to taste. "As punishment for you taking leave for no reason before, I'll leave these to you. There were originally 10 parts waiting to be assembled, but Master has specially picked the most complicated one. See, how much Master loves you." Mo Heng said in a hurried tone of kowtowing and thanking Master for his kindness. "Take leave for no reason, my ass." The corner of Silen's mouth twitched. "Master, you really hurt me to death." Silen emphasized the word hurt. "Of course, who asked you to be my disciple?" Ever since Silen found out that being a research assistant in this circle was almost equivalent to being a disciple, and a true disciple at that, Silen felt that his future was filled with parts. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get to work. Don't think I don't know that you ate 3 big bowls of rice, a pot of noodles, and a plate of roast chicken for breakfast. You have all the strength you need right now, kid. Also, as my supervisor, don't even think of slacking off. If the overall accuracy can't reach 96% of the theoretical value, then dismantle it and start over again. Mo Hung patted the monitor next to him. The program had already been set up, and it was just waiting for Silen to start calculating the overall accuracy. Silen looked at Mo Hung helplessly. Thank you for your grace, master. You're welcome. If the students outside saw Mo Hung's appearance, their jaws would definitely drop. At this moment, Mo Hung was completely devoid of his usual amiable smile and the steady temperament of a senior professor. Vice Headmaster and Ting described Mo Hung like this as a senior academic consultant. Silen arrived in front of the piles of parts and gave them a cursory look. First, he had to assemble the parts that had already been categorized into components, and there was a certain order to the assembly of these components. He had to choose which pile to assemble first and which pile to assemble next so that he could save more time during the assembly later on. With just a glance, Silen could see the best assembly order for these piles of parts. After choosing a pile, he began to assemble them. Mo Hung nodded in satisfaction. His disciple was still better than Silen. Not even the disciples of those old fellows had eyes as good as Silen's. Every knuckle, every muscle, and every joint had just the right amount of strength and precise timing. There were no unnecessary movements, but it was as if they were looking at a perfect work of art that they couldn't take their eyes off of. The feeling it gave off was that a part could be assembled with the slightest movement of a finger. It was incomparably easy. In reality, there were multiple movements happening at the same time in that instant. It was just that it was difficult for a normal person's vision to capture them. Every time Mo Hung watched Silen assemble, he would have the feeling that the golden point was right in front of him. It was a wonderful feeling. Silen was Mo Hung's hope, his hope to make contact with that legendary light dot. The monitor next to Mo Hung showed that his overall accuracy had reached 96% of the theoretical value. This was a very difficult feat to maintain, and even the great teachers of 7 lights might not necessarily be able to maintain such high overall accuracy for a long period of time. This was the difference between constitution and concentration. For a mechanical engineer, constitution was also an important factor. Every time Silen assembled, he felt that he should be able to assemble faster and have higher overall accuracy. But no matter how hard he tried, his overall accuracy could only stay at 96%. It was like a transparent barrier, he could see the other side, but he couldn't jump over it. Sigh, forget it. I can't force this kind of bottleneck either. If I accidentally shake my hand and my overall accuracy drops to 95%, then according to Mo Hung's standards, the entire part will have to be dismantled and reassembled. Dismantled and reassembled. Suddenly, Silen felt a blurry light flash through the darkness. Dismantle and reassemble, dismantle and reassemble. Mo Hung was watching with great interest at first. He was sighing at his disciple's powerful assembly talent and feeling pleased with himself on the inside. But in the next moment, he saw Silen suddenly stop what he was doing and stand there motionlessly as if he was stunned. Chapter 53. Mo Hung did not disturb Silen. Silen must have thought of something. Sometimes, as long as a fleeting idea was grasped again, it would be very beneficial to personal progress. Such an opportunity could only be encountered. Of course, he hoped that Silen was really inspired and not hungry again. If that was the case, Mo Hung would not be able to resist throwing the cup at him. Silen stayed there for a few minutes. Then, he put down the parts he was still holding and put aside the parts that were almost assembled. He took out the combination tool knife and began to dismantle the parts one by one. Until now, Silen had only assembled and had not really dismantled any machinery. Therefore, when he was thinking, he always felt that something was missing. The so-called mastery was to have a more comprehensive and thorough understanding. Forward and backward, assembly and disassembly, they should all be more thoroughly understood and practiced. During the process of dismantling, Silen could think from a different angle and analyze the machinery. It turned out that this was what he had been missing all along. Every time Silen swept his eyes across an assembled machine, the only thing he would think about was how it was assembled. He never thought about how he should dismantle the machine, which direction he should start from, which part he should start from, and what order he should follow. Reverse deduction, reverse speculation, just like anti-tracking during hunting, should be on the same level as forward thinking, but it was often ignored. Divergent thinking and convergent thinking played an equally important role. Silen's dismantling was not slow either. Almost all one could see was Silen holding the tool knife and making a casual cut. The parts that were originally assembled as a solid whole were all separated. Every angle of force applied meant whether the dismantled parts were intact or deformed. The parts that Silen dismantled fully explained the ability of the disassembler. On the parts, as long as the tool knife touched them, there would more or less be traces left. They might not be visible to the naked eye, but they definitely existed. Even the slightest change in a part would affect its precision. Therefore, during the process of dismantling, Silen tried his best to reduce the number of times he used the knife. Therefore, there was a flash of the knife and several pieces were dismantled. Mo Hung looked at Silen's movements and nodded to himself. Sure enough, he was inspired and not hungry. After Silen disassembled the parts that were almost fully assembled, he sat on the ground and tossed the parts up, caught them, tossed them up again, caught them again, tossed them up again. Then he put the parts aside and lay on the ground, staring at the ceiling. In his mind, the parts were scattered all over the place, then assembled one by one. After assembling, they separated, disassembled, assembled, disassembled, assembled. After thinking for a moment, Silen crawled to his feet and began to assemble. Unlike before, Silen would toss a few parts into the air when he was assembling, and when the parts fell to the assembly point, Silen's hand would flash, and the parts would be firmly attached to it. At first glance, it looked as if the parts were being tossed into the air and then falling back down. If one looked closely, they would see that the parts were falling in a certain order. At the same time, during the assembly, Silen made improvements in 3 areas. This was a shortcut discovered during the reverse process. A string of data appeared on the screen. The overall accuracy is 96% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 96% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 97% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 97% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 97% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 97% of the theoretical value. The overall accuracy is 97% of the theoretical value. Mo Hung was so excited that his face turned red. Genius, Silen was definitely a genius. How long had it been since Silen started formal education in mechanical assembly? The overall accuracy of the assembly was almost on par with a veteran like Mo Hung, who had been immersed in this field for many years. He was also one of the best in the entire Galactic Alliance. In such a short period of time, the overall accuracy had improved from 95% to 97%. Then, how long would it take to reach 98%? Silen was completely immersed in that world. He was assembling piles and piles of sorted parts into parts, and then assembling these parts into a complete body. Mo Hung had been watching Silen's assembly all this time and didn't look at the calculation screen again. Silen's series of assembly could absolutely be used as an excellent teaching example. However, he didn't know how much other people could learn from it. It was a test of a person's eyesight and active thinking. Throughout the day, Silen did not stop. Mo Heng sat there and watched Silen assemble. Neither of them ate lunch, nor did they have the intention to stop. When Silen finished assembling the last part, he checked it and pressed the switch. The machine continued to change forms. The movements were smooth and there were no other noises or suspicious sounds. There's no need to check. It's completely qualified, Mo Heng said. He could not hide the excitement in his voice. Just as he was about to get up and take a good look, he realized, ouch. Ouch, it's numb. Mo Heng rubbed his legs. He had been in the same position for too long. Only now did he realize that his legs were numb. Silen, hurry up and help me up. Calm down a little. Sit down first. Silen walked over and put 2 chairs side by side. He slowly placed Mo Heng's legs on them and began to massage them. Sigh, I'm so old and useless. Mo Heng sighed. I saw that you were quite imposing when you were scolding people yesterday. Those mentors couldn't even lift their heads. Yesterday, Silen had coincidentally seen the scene of Mo Heng scolding those mentors. That was called imposing and forceful. It felt like he was exuding the aura of a king. Those mentors who were usually arrogant in front of the students all had their heads almost buried in their crotches. Mo Heng raised his head. That's called temperament. It's innate temperament. Even if you still have the aura of a king, you can't forget to eat and sleep when you're working, can you? I heard that you often stay in the workshop, working for several hours at a time. This is called professionalism. Mo Heng said with a face full of righteousness. Yes, professionalism. Hey, you brat. Mo Heng reached out and pinched Silen's face. What's with that look of disdain? How would I dare? But even machinery needs maintenance, not to mention people. You better be careful. As the pillar of the research division, you have to last. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble if no one looks after me. TSK, you little brat. Mo Heng scolded jokingly. After pinching Silen's face hard, he waved his hand. Alright, it's not numb anymore. I'll take a look at the machine first. Mo Heng walked around the machine that Silen had already assembled, carefully examining the finished product in front of him. Master, I want to take a vacation. I'm exhausted today. Permission granted. Vacation. Mo Heng's eyes were still shining as he walked around the machine, reaching out to check it from time to time. Master, I want a raise. After coming to the research division, other than the fixed salary of an assistant, Silen received extra income for every completed mission. This extra income was naturally paid by Mo Heng. Alright, a raise. Mo Heng agreed readily. 3 times the salary. No problem, 3 times. And, hurry up and go eat. Seeing that Mo Heng was still not ready to leave, Silen ordered food and had the robot send it over. Of course, Mo Heng paid for it. After eating with Mo Heng in the break room of the workshop and discussing his thoughts on assembly, Mo Heng told Silen to just sleep there. In Mo Heng's heart, the only people who stayed in Mo Heng's break room were his son and grandson. Silen was the third, which showed how important Silen was to Mo Heng. Mo Heng's workshop and office both had special break rooms, and because of Mo Heng's high position, the break room was fully equipped, so Silen did not refuse. He took over Mo Heng's break room, ate dinner, took a nice bath, and slept comfortably for 2 days. Silen slept soundly, but little did he know that the sector championship platform was in an uproar. Chapter 54. After he was done sleeping, Silen got up and opened his communicator. There were more than 30 missed calls, and all of them were from the same person. Looking at the time, they were all called during Silen's usual rest hours. But this time, Silen had slept for 2 whole days, and his communicator was turned off. Looking at the number and the many reply as soon as you see this messages, Sillin was puzzled. What the hell was this guy up to this time? However, Sillin still dialed the number at the first opportunity. The call was swiftly connected without waiting, and Knight's haggard and aggrieved face appeared on the interface. Sillin nearly spat out a mouthful of water he was drinking. Just how wronged must he be to make Knight, a man who usually acted like he was number one in the world, say something like this? What now? I'm being bullied. Bullshit, who would dare bully you? Who in the entire Seven Lights could bully you? Get to the point. After Knight's explanation, Sillin finally understood why this guy had called more than 30 times. Knight ran into his old friend Stantine of the 2nd Military Academy when he was doing warm-up training on the Sector Championships platform. However, Stantine and another student of the 2nd Military Academy were defeated by the Visby brothers of the 4th Military Academy during warm-up training, and it stirred up Knight's fighting spirit. However, Knight really couldn't find anyone he liked to team up with in Seven Lights because the Visby brothers only participated in the less popular double matches and not the popular single matches. The first person Knight thought of was Sillin, but Sillin's communicator was turned off, and he didn't reply to his messages either. He tried looking for Ci Jincheng and Lung, but neither of them were free. Surt and Hard. Their abilities were still lacking. Pride? No way. Knight felt that if Pride went, he might not be able to stop himself from fighting all three of them at once. It was better to go with Sillin. And so, the communicator was turned off after the first call. The second call was turned off, and the third call was still turned off. Knight had endured from yesterday until today, and his face was haggard. He wanted to go to the research division several times, but if he did, Mo Hun would probably leave both of them there. If that was the case, then he really wouldn't have any chance at all. The sector championship was about to officially begin, and the registration for some of the smaller competitions ahead of it was the first to open. There were 2 days, yesterday and today, so it was no wonder that Knight was in such a hurry. Sillin was amused by Knight's aggrieved look. Alright, I just got a few days off. I'll go with you to meet the twins. Knight's eyes lit up when he heard Sillin's words. The haggard look on his face disappeared as if he had been injected with chicken blood. Brother, you'd better come back soon. The registration ends tonight. I'm going to send the duel invitation right now. Beep, Sillin was speechless as he stared at the disconnected communicator. Just how thirsty was this guy? After stretching, washing up and tidying up, Sillin walked out of Mo Heng's workshop. After sleeping for 2 days, he was hungry. Looking for food was his top priority. As he walked to the research division's cafeteria, a student who did not look well greeted Sillin weakly. What's wrong, Sing? You don't look too good, Sillin said. Sing was about the same age as Sillin. He was a specially recruited first-year student, but he basically did not go to class. He spent most of his time in the research division working on projects. Don't mention it. Poor bowel movement. I bring shit to work. Sing had always felt that working in the research division was just like going to work. He had to clock in, work on projects, and get paid. He was like an office worker. Pfft, Sing, this is a cafeteria. Can't you be a little more refined? Someone beside him spat out his orange juice and glared at Sing. Sorry, I have to be considerate to someone with periodic constipation. Sing made an apologetic gesture and left the cafeteria. Sillin smiled and shook his head. This guy was famous for his periodic constipation. After looking for food, Sillin returned to his workshop to pack up and get ready to return to the dormitory. As he was packing, Ling Long came over. After entering, Ling Long asked in a small voice, "There's no one else here, right?" "No, the surveillance wasn't turned on either." "What are you trying to do? Are you trying to take over a man?" After eating and sleeping, Sillin was in a much better mood and joked around more. Ling Long curled her lips. After closing the door, she crossed her arms and looked at Sillin with a sneaky smile. How would I dare to take over Shadow X, Sillin was surprised. Ling Long's words were very certain. There was not even a hint of speculation in them. How did she know? The information protection measures on the platform were done by him personally. Ling Long looked straight at Silen. Whether you swim in the water or fly in the sky, whether you are ugly or beautiful, I can always recognize you at first glance. Silen smiled when he heard this. Levine's Colors, Chapter 7, The Butterfly and the Dragonfly. You read Levine's books too? Ling Long's eyes shone, as if she had finally found a friend after traveling thousands of mountains and rivers. Very few people read Levine's fantasy fairy tales with a more artistic style. I didn't expect you to read them too, and remember them so clearly. Silen didn't say anything. Chapter 7 of Levine's Colors was about a butterfly and a dragonfly. There was a very large tree by the stream. Its thick branches stretched across the stream. A very disgusting caterpillar was lying there eating leaves. The branch was very close to the water, and after eating its fill, it climbed up the leaf and looked at the water below on a whim. Through the reflection of the water, it saw an ugly and ferocious-looking insect below the water, and that insect also saw it. For a period of time, the caterpillar ran over every day, and every day, the insect under the water would wait for it at the same place below the water. Days passed, and the caterpillar was about to turn into a cocoon. That day, it ran to the same place and glanced at the insect under the water, then climbed to a place on the tree where its companions were turning into cocoons. The day after the caterpillar left, the insect under the water climbed out and attached itself to a plant that was exposed above the water. Many of its kind also climbed out along the water plants, and their bodies began to change. When the caterpillar broke out of the cocoon and flew out as a butterfly, it immediately returned to the original place, but there was no sign of the insect under the water. It was very dejected, and flew with its companions to a flower field not far from where it was. There were colorful flowers everywhere, and all sorts of butterflies, dragonflies, bees, and so on. It was very lively. The butterfly flew and flew, and when it passed by a patch of irises, its gaze fell on a purple iris. There was a dragonfly there, flapping its wings, and its thin wings reflected a metallic glow under the sunlight. At the end of The Butterfly and the Dragonfly, Levine wrote a paragraph as usual. One of the lines was, "Whether you swim in the water or fly in the sky, whether you are ugly or beautiful, I will always be able to recognize you at first glance." Do you believe Levine's words? Exquisite asked. I don't know, Silen answered. But Hannah believed that she liked this fairy tale very much, and that was why Silen remembered it. Exquisite glanced at Silen. You don't believe it. Jumping onto the table at the side, Exquisite shook her legs like a child. There are many unreasonable things in fairy tales, but I agree with Levine's words. Turning around, Exquisite looked at Silen seriously. I knew it was you the moment I saw Shadow X. Silen's back was sweating. Was this a confession? Fortunately, Exquisite did not dwell on this. She took out the microcomputer from her bag, turned it on, logged into the Sector Championship platform, and pulled up the Sector Championship forum. Look, Shadow X, you're famous. Chapter 55. Silen rarely fought on the Sector Championships platform to begin with, fighting only once a day. This was already enough to make a lot of people want to throw a tantrum, and this time, Shadow X disappeared for 3 days in a row without accepting a single challenge. Some people could not help but come out to criticize him. On the Sector Championship forums, a lot of people had posted their challenge requests right away, openly challenging Shadow X. Most of these people were from the military academies, and most of them were A-rank genotypes. The challengers were all A-rank geniuses from military academies. A military academy's A-rank genotype actually dared to openly challenge a B-rank genotype student of a Sector B academy. Moreover, all 4 military academies were like this, completely unafraid of being laughed at by others. Everyone could not help but wonder just what kind of divine being Shadow X was that he could actually force those military academy students who usually looked down on the other sectors into such a state. Shadow X had only appeared for 3 days, and these 3 days were not long at all. However, that generic robot appearance of his had already become a major characteristic, and at the same time, it also caused a lot of people to feel helpless. There was information about Shadow X on the forums. It was a generic robot image and a simple and monotonous list of information. Male, 7 lights, rank B genotype, 3 wins and 0 losses. That was all. It was so simple that it was mysterious. After Shadow X's first battle against Tusk, the number of people following him exceeded 10,000. After his third battle, his name became famous throughout the entire Sector Championship platform, and the number of people challenging him had reached 5 digits. Most of them were military academy students of Sector C. The number of people following him had reached 6 digits and was growing rapidly towards 7 digits. This was an unprecedented situation. Since Shadow X had not logged onto the Sector Championships platform for 3 days, someone jumped out to accuse Shadow X of acting like a big shot. Putting on airs? If you have the guts, come and play with me. The people of 7 Lights immediately responded. The people who used to accuse Shadow X of corrupting the school's reputation had also changed their stance. Right now, Shadow X was 7 Lights' treasure. There were also those who said that Shadow X was deliberately avoiding the battle, but this voice did not last long before it was scolded down by the other armies, especially those few people in the military academies whose words carried a lot of weight. They believed that Shadow X had something to do and had not logged into the Sector Championships platform for the time being. There were people from 7 Lights who had specifically made a list of 7 Lights first-year students who were stronger than the rest and whose genotype was at rank B, and Silen's name was among them. It was just that he had been eliminated in the first round of screening. A person who had just recovered from a serious illness could challenge someone from a military academy right after being discharged from the hospital? No one would believe it. Moreover, some of the trainees from the training division said that Silen's marksmanship was not bad, but in terms of individual combat ability, they did not know. After all, he was ranked last among the 5 trainees who participated in the mission. However, after many rounds of screening, they could not find a single person who could possibly be Shadow X. One of the threads speculated that perhaps Shadow X was not a freshman at all. There was no information about his year in his information at all, so he could not be identified as a freshman just because it was his first time registering on the Sector Championships platform. It should be known that there were plenty of amazing people who had missed out on the Sector Championship due to certain missions during their freshman years. As soon as this post was posted, many people responded to it. In short, there were all kinds of opinions. Therefore, when Silen looked at the Sector Championship forum page that Exquisite had opened, he was also stunned. He had not expected that just 3 days of contact with the Sector Championship platform would result in such an effect. That's why I said, Shadow X, you're famous now. Exquisite looked at Silen. What do you plan to do? Let's talk about it later. Anyway, I have a few days off. I'll log in today and check out the situation. I don't know how many challenge requests you've received, but the Sector Championship is about to officially begin. Are you going to participate in the minor tournaments before this? Minor tournaments referred to those single or two-man tournaments, while major tournaments referred to those that were conducted by teams. Regardless of whether it was a minor tournament or a major tournament, it had nothing to do with the popularity of the tournament. For example, the single combat tournament was more popular, and the audience would always be packed to the brim. The two-man tournaments, on the other hand, were a little colder, and the chances of stars appearing were not as high as the single combat tournament. You want to know? Silen stood up and packed his backpack. Let's wait until tomorrow. Exquisite wrinkled her nose in dissatisfaction and snorted softly. Stingy. She put away her microcomputer and even made a face at Silen before she left. After Exquisite left Silen's workshop and walked out of the Institute of Mechanical Engineering, she saw someone standing in the hallway not too far away. She was still dressed in the same refreshing attire as before. It was not flirtatious, but it gave off a very dazzling feeling. Teresa did not turn around to look at Exquisite. She was still looking at the distant scenery with a smile on her lips. When Exquisite saw Teresa, there was none of the playfulness she had in Scyllane's workshop just now. Her deep amber eyes were filled with coldness, so coldness that Teresa could clearly feel her killing intent. You know, there's someone else in Scyllane's heart. Even so, it won't be you, Teresa. Exquisite had always called Teresa by her name. Teresa did not mind either. She only smiled lightly as she felt the breeze blowing over. Teresa, I don't care what kind of deal you have with Scyllane. If anything happens to Scyllane, I won't let your galwa get away with it. With just you. Or your background. Teresa played with her hair that was blown up by the wind. It seemed that she did not take Exquisite's words to heart at all. Exquisite looked at Teresa and suddenly smiled mockingly. Teresa, you always think you're very smart. She then left without looking back. On the same day, when Scyllane returned to the dormitory, Knight was still the only one there. Seeing that Scyllane had returned, Knight no longer cared about the matters on the Sector Championship platform. He urged Scyllane to log into the Sector Championship platform and sign up. When Scyllane logged in, Knight ran back to his bedroom and brought his microcomputer over. Registration required 2 people to enter their information at the same time. For convenience's sake, Knight directly brought his own equipment over. However, when Knight saw the screen that popped up on Scyllane's microcomputer, his mouth dropped wide open. On the screen in front of Scyllane, an unusually familiar-looking generic robot was swaying back and forth. The name displayed was Shadow X. Scyllane, what? Fuck you. Knight rushed over and strangled Scyllane's neck. I didn't expect you to be the mysterious generic Shadow X that spread all over the Sector Championship platform, the one who single-handedly provoked the war between 4 military academies. How dare you hide it from us for so long? Sigh, it's not like you asked me. Hurry up and sign up. Registration is more important. That's right, I'll let you go today. Next time I'll let you know the consequences of lying to us. You're a great man, please forgive me. I'll treat you to crabs next time. Don't give me that, kid. I'm telling you, fuck, I want to eat fresh, live, and unexperimented crabs. As expected of a glutton. Scyllane only took a glance at the unread numbers in his message box and inbox before he stopped looking at them. That number, it was a lot. Although he had logged into the Sector Championship platform, he was in stealth mode. He could neither fight nor train. Of course, it was still possible to sign up. Knight's ID was simply Knight. Knight was quite famous on the Sector Championship platform, and many people in the military academies knew him. Moreover, Knight was ranked first among this batch of 7 Light's new students in terms of individual combat strength. Of course, he received a lot of attention. However, when Knight's and Shadow X's names appeared in the participant list of the double combat tournament, the entire Sector Championship platform boiled over. Just how big of a wave would this duo cause? Chapter 56. The Sector Championship was very open, fair, and free. Everyone who signed up would be recorded and made public, and anyone who logged on to the Sector Championships platform would be able to look it up. This way, if they saw someone they wanted to challenge, they could also sign up and participate. In the past, the single combat tournament was the most popular of all small-scale competitions. It was very easy to stir up the students' blood. Everyone hoped that they could become a domineering figure who could single-handedly defeat tens of thousands of opponents. With such glory and standing in the limelight, who would be willing to share it with another person? But this term was different. When the duo of Knight and Shadow X appeared on the participant list, the entire Sector Championship platform situation began to change. The single and double combat competitions were held at almost the same time. Students would usually only participate in one of them. At the same time, it was also a more comprehensive assessment of each school's combat strength. Due to the sudden discovery of the duo's name on the list of participants, many students who had already signed up for the single combat competition also signed up for the double combat competition. As a result, the number of people signing up for the double combat competition exceeded the number of people signing up for the single combat competition. Fortunately, it was a virtual platform. It could provide multiple match points to start at the same time, so it would not cause a situation where too many people could not participate. There was no upper limit to the number of participants in the small-scale competition. This was also a major feature of the Sector Championships platform. Inside the 3rd Military Academy's gravity training room, Faradin was fighting against someone. The blurry shadows of fists and the banging sounds of fists and kicks clashing against each other rang out incessantly. It was obvious that Faradin was slightly inferior to the opponent, and he was having a bit of a hard time dealing with the fists that were coming his way. To be able to maintain such a high speed in such a gravitational field, it had to be said that the two of them were quite outstanding. Bang! Faradin took a few steps back, swung his arms that blocked the kick, and said with some annoyance, "I missed another move." "It's fine. You're already very outstanding. No one in the first years can block so many of my moves." After fighting for such a long time, Faradin's opponent actually didn't sweat much, and his slightly hurried breathing soon calmed down. Faradin looked at the other party, and said for the umpteenth time, "Boss Boar, I really want to see your duel with Shadow X. It must be very exciting." Standing not too far away, Boar relaxed his muscles and shook his head. "Shadow X is too mysterious. Many of the people I know have sent him war invitations, but none of them have responded. Who knows what kind of god he is? But I suggest you meet Nate when the time comes. 7 Lights Night. He seems to be quite famous. I heard from my dorm that he's also a freshman." Ever since he lost to Shadow X, Faradin hadn't paid much attention to anyone else. He usually only learned about them from others. Knight could have come to the military academy, but somehow he ended up at Sector B. However, his strength cannot be underestimated. "Do you know Nate's full name?" Faradin shook his head. "Knight's full name is Fiegler Knight. Thunderstorm Fiegler." Faradin was immediately interested. That kid hasn't used Thunderstorm Punch since he entered the Sector Championships platform. Faradin rubbed his fists and feet. He will definitely meet him when the time comes. He should be participating in the single combat tournament, right? It should be. DDD, the emergency pager on the wall of the training room rang. Communicators were not allowed in the gravity training field, so both of them had their communicators turned off. If there was an emergency, they would use the special pager on the wall to transfer the call. Boar walked to the side, removed the gravity field, and connected the pager. "What happened?" "Boss Boar, there's big news on the Sector Championship platform. Knight and Shadow X have teamed up and signed up for the double combat tournament." Faradin, who was putting on his jacket, pricked his ears and lost control of his strength, tearing his jacket into 2 pieces. Faradin didn't care about his jacket either, and simply tossed the 2 pieces to the side before running to Boar's side like a wisp of smoke. His ears were pricked up, afraid that he would miss a single word. When the other was done, Faradin was so excited that he couldn't wait to run back and sign up for the double combat tournament immediately. After the communication was cut off, Boar was silent for a moment before asking Faradin, "Is Shadow X really that strong?" Faradin's expression immediately turned incredibly serious. "He's very strong. I don't know how strong he really is, because I feel that he didn't use his full strength at all when he fought me. Also, I felt like I was being led by the nose from the beginning to the end. That last strike, just one strike alone, could have killed me at my peak." After hearing Faradin's words, Boar laughed out loud. "That's good. Faradin, let's go meet Shadow X and Thunderstorm Knight." "Boss Boar, you're going too? Didn't the instructors say that you're going to fight Kamas for the championship of the single combat tournament this year?" Although Faradin was very tempted by Boar's suggestion since Boar was the runner-up of last year's single combat tournament and his strength was there for all to see, and he had also gotten familiar with Boar's sparring sessions over the past half a year. Forming a pair to fight in the double combat tournament was definitely possible, but the instructor's words were in front of him, and he couldn't go back on his word. The instructor also said, "Isn't the purpose of a combat platform to fight to your heart's content? What's the point of having so many false reputations?" Faradin pressed his fingers together and muttered inwardly, "The instructor's bullshit of false reputations are meant for us inside the 3rd Military Academy, but the false reputations outside the 3rd Military Academy are very important to them because those are related to their welfare. Otherwise, they'd punish us to run around the field naked." Not long after the duo of Knight and Shadow X appeared on the double combat tournament name list, the 3rd Military Academy's Boar and Faradin duo brought everyone's attention to the double combat tournament once more. Half an hour later, at almost the same time, the 2nd Military Academy's Ryan and Bon duo, as well as the 1st Military Academy's Kamas and Feng Haichao duo, set off the 3rd climax of this term's double combat tournament. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this time's double combat tournament was filled with glittering stars. Last term's double combat tournament champions, the Visby brothers, Thunderstorm Knight and the much-anticipated Shadow X. Last term's 2nd place in the single combat tournament, Boar, and the 2nd Military Academy's rising seed Faradin, last term's 4th place Ryan and Bon, who was rumored to be stronger than Ryan but had missed last year's tournament due to a mission, last term's single combat tournament champion Kamas and Feng Haichao, who was rumored to also have missed last year's tournament due to a mission but was no weaker than Kamas. Looking at it this way, other than the 4th Military Academies Valente, who shared 2nd place with Boar in last year's single combat tournament, 3 of the top 4 contestants of last year's single combat tournament had appeared on the double combat tournament's name list. The Sector Championships platform went completely crazy. Since the top few of Sector C's 4 military academies were participating in the double combat tournament, the other academies naturally couldn't be left behind. Although from a strategic point of view, the best way would be to avoid a tournament where experts gathered and participate in another tournament, from a personal perspective, this time's double combat tournament held too much significance. They hadn't seen such a scene for many years, or at least in all the years that they knew of, there had never been a double combat tournament that could attract the top geniuses from all over the world. But this time was different. If they missed it, who knew how many years they would have to wait to encounter such a situation again? If they missed it, they would regret it. Since they didn't want to regret it, of course they had to sign up. Because of the matter of signing up for the double combat tournament, the faces of every academy's higher-ups darkened. They couldn't stop the students from signing up even if they wanted to. Spittle flew everywhere, and using both carrot and stick, these little fellows still eagerly signed up. It truly infuriated the higher-ups of the academies. The night of the registration deadline was a crazy night. Whether it was the electronic publication responsible for reporting or the students who didn't sign up due to their limited strength, everyone was so excited that they couldn't sleep well for the entire night. On the other side, Silan, who was about to sleep and rest, and Knight, who was still fighting on the sector championship platform, were simultaneously pulled back to their senses by a fatal series of calls. Silan pressed the accept button. "Where's Soulseeker? You could have just dialed our numbers, but why the hell are you dialing all 5 communicators installed in the dormitory at the same time? Are you calling the police?" Silan, "Knight, just you wait for me," without any sense of loyalty. "I'll return to the dormitory immediately. Don't fall asleep, I'll drag you out even if you fall asleep." Lung roared loudly from the other side of the communicator. Chapter 57. Although Lung had never had the time to participate in the sector championship, he had always been paying attention to the happenings on the sector championship platform. Before this, he did not dare to confirm whether or not Shadow X was Silan, but when Knight and Shadow X's team appeared on the registration list to participate in the double combat tournament, Lung knew that Shadow X must be that bastard Silan. That was why he immediately dialed Silan and Knight's communicator numbers at the same time. Just in case, he dialed the other 5 public communicators in the dormitory at the same time, treating it as an alarm. The moment Lung entered the dormitory, he saw Silan and Knight sitting in the living room with their legs crossed waiting for him with dark expressions. Judging from their expressions, if he did not give an explanation, he would probably have to sleep on the streets today. Before coming, Lung had already planned everything out. First, he had to apologize and calm the other party's anger first. Pastry from a newly opened pastry shop. There are meat and fruit fillings, kept in a fresh-keeping box, still crispy. Oh, and 2 cups of hot milk tea. Eating pastry and drinking milk tea, hee, not bad. Lung handed Silin and Knight a cup of milk tea each, and then took out a cup for himself. Based on Silin's understanding of Lung, he definitely wouldn't have thought of buying milk tea. Even if he did, he would have bought alcohol instead. Adding other factors into the equation, there was an 80 to 90% chance that these 2 cups of milk tea had been gifted to Lung when he bought the shortbread. As for the 3rd cup, it was probably Lung who had used his characteristics to shamelessly ask for it. Seeing Silin and Knight start eating the pastry and milk tea, Lung relaxed a little. Now, he had to seize the initiative. Just as Knight was about to open his mouth while chewing on the pastry, Lung quickly put down his cup and reprimanded them righteously. You guys didn't discuss such an important matter with me. Do you know that you're not fighting for a competition, but money? Money. Silin and Knight's mouth was still open, and he ignored the pastry crumbs that leaked out. Lung turned on his microcomputer, opened it to a certain page, enlarged the screen, and pointed at it to explain, there are also bets on the sector championship platform, officially organized. As he spoke, their communicators and the 5 public communicators in the dormitory rang at the same time. Looking at the name displayed on the communicator, Silin facepalmed. Why did they all like to play this trick? After the call was connected, C.I. Jincheng's image appeared on the screen. He was still wearing his work clothes, and his workshop was behind him. As I thought, you guys are discussing a scheme. C.I. Jincheng said as if he had expected this. Isn't it impossible for your base to communicate with the outside world? Also, isn't Seven Lights unable to casually communicate with the outside world? Lung asked. C.I. Jincheng said disdainfully, that's for normal people, it's useless against me. What were you talking about just now? Start over again. Alright, since everyone's here, I'll tell you all about my grand plan. Lung cleared his throat and told them about the bet. After listening, Knight said hesitantly, but sometimes, it's not something we can control. For example, if we meet those people from the military academies, they'll fight very hard, because their battle results will affect the welfare of their instructors or instructors. If the welfare of the higher-ups is affected, those kids won't feel good either. They'll definitely fight with all their might, and if that's the case, we won't be able to control the time well. They haven't joined the League of Stars yet, right? Also, what are the welfare of their instructors and instructors? As far as I know, the military academy's instructors and instructors all have very high military ranks, and they definitely get a lot of money. Lung was puzzled. Knight shook his head and showed them with his fingers, Sector C's military academies are affiliated to the League of Stars' military. They're a little different from the military academies of the other sectors. Every student from Sector C is an absolute elite, not to mention those top students have been reserved by the garrison since a long time ago. For example, 1st Military Academy's Feng Haichao, 2nd Military Academy's Ban and the others had started carrying out missions a long time ago, so there was no need to worry about their future after graduation. However, some of the military academy's instructors are different. There's a word called banishment. They're all Galactic Army field officers, but some of them are in Sector A, B, C, some are transferred to the 10 trade sectors, and some are banished to the 13 backward sectors. As a soldier, are you willing to lead the troops to encircle and annihilate the galactic robbers and sector rebellions, or are you willing to lead the troops to open up new wastelands? At the same time, Silin Helong had a look of realization on his face. So there were so many hidden meanings behind the welfare the military academies spoke of. But I believe that Silin and Knight can take care of them. C.I. Jincheng said confidently. Duh, I believe that too. Otherwise I wouldn't have abandoned my business over there and rushed over here overnight. Lung looked at Knight and Silin expectantly. Knight rubbed his chin. Although he was frowning, the upturned corner of his lips could not hide his true thoughts. This is a very challenging matter. However, he liked this kind of extremely challenging matter. The trio looked at Silin. Sillin slowly put down the cup in his hand. There is a certain degree of difficulty. Although he said so sharply, he still took out his card and passed it to Lung at the same time. Lung took it knowingly. How much are we betting? Everything. As long as I don't say anything, you can bet everything every time. Lung swiped Sillin's card reader across the card reader he carried with him. After looking at the number on it, his eyebrows rose. It looks like you're pretty confident. Knight tossed his card over as well. Bet it all on me too. Lung. I'll transfer the money to your card later. C.I. Jincheng also said from the other side. Tonight, while the other students were either too excited to sleep or training through the night, the four of them conspired to make money in the dormitory. What a scumbag it was. The next day, the first match list on the Sector Championships platform had been released. The match allocation was randomly assigned by the system, and Sillin and Knight's first match was against a pair of Prometheus Academy duo from Sector B. Their IDs were World Domination and Armies Breaker. Judging from their pre-match training results, they had a winning rate of more than 90%. Moreover, both of them were A-rank genotypes. It made sense. Which contestant in the tournament didn't have some skill? Moreover, both World Domination and Armies Breaker were among the top 50 in last year's single combat tournament. After a year of hard work, they definitely weren't weak in terms of strength, at least not in Sector B. Shadow X's first match was sure to be watched by a lot of people. Even those who were competing at the same time were prepared to end their matches as soon as possible to watch. It was only the first round of matches, but the number of people watching Shadow X and Knight's match had already reached the peak of the top 8. When Shadow X's iconic generic robot appeared on the field, the audience boiled with excitement. This was the first time Shadow X had appeared on the field since he disappeared 4 days ago. However, the audience was destined to be disappointed. In the first match, Shadow X crossed his arms and stood motionless at the side the moment he entered the field. Then, he watched the battle to the end. The entire match was won by Knight alone, and he didn't even use Thunderstorm Punch. He was still able to send the Prometheus duo flying in 5 minutes with ease. Of course, if he held back a little, the other party could have lasted another 5 minutes, or if Knight was a little more serious, he could have finished off the other party in 2 minutes. However, Lung's bet was 5 minutes. Shadow X didn't fight in the first match, and Knight won 1 versus 2. The second match was the same. The third, the fourth, gradually, some people couldn't sit still anymore. Damn system, can't you arrange a stronger opponent for them? It's been 5 matches, and Shadow X hasn't fought even once. The few groups that were defeated by Knight wanted to cry. They were actually quite strong in the school. Finally, under everyone's expectant gazes, the duo of Shadow X and Knight welcomed a special opponent. The opponent was not from a military academy, and the reason why they were called special was because one of them played with guns, and the other played with swords. The tournament rules didn't forbid weapons, but they had to apply for it. If both sides accepted it, then there was no problem. It was obvious that Knight and Sillin didn't refuse. In fact, they were quite looking forward to it. Guns and knives. Interesting. After 5 disappointing matches, the spectating students became excited once more. It was because Shadow X was definitely going to fight in this match. They had only heard of Shadow X's strength and had never seen it with their own eyes. After all, Shadow X had only fought 3 times, and no one had recorded it. No one could imagine just how strong he was. The time of Shadow X and Knight's match was different in different sectors, different planets, or even different places on the same planet. However, being able to witness Shadow X fight with their own eyes was worth staying up all night. Chapter 58. There was a reason why so many people were optimistic about this match. First of all, the duo that Shadow X and Knight were about to face were using weapons. One used dual blades, and the other used dual pistols. Second, And also the reason that many people were excited about, was that the duo using dual blades and pistols were both women, and they were two famous beauties of Sector B's Billy Academy no less. Since they were two great beauties, the two men, Shadow X and Night, would probably be more tactful towards them. Moreover, these two women were extremely lethal, and would definitely force Shadow X to act. In fact, some people were even guessing if Shadow X and Night would fall in this match. After all, there was news before the match that Shadow X and Night had agreed to their opponents using weapons, but they were still fighting with their bare hands. This pedantic gentlemanly demeanor would be their fatal weakness. This was the logic behind the saying that one would fail miserably in a simple task after crossing 1,000 flowers. The third and most important point was that this saber and spear duo, Lu Yewu and One Smile Kill, were ranked second only to the Visby brothers in the last double combat tournament. The last second place should be able to force Shadow X to act no matter what, right? It was unlikely that Night alone would be able to hold on. There were even more people watching this match on the Sector Championships platform than the first match. The number of viewers for the matches that started at the same time as this match was pitifully low. Even if some of the duos were somewhat famous, they were completely overshadowed by the duo of Shadow X and Night. Boss Boar, do you think Shadow X will act in this match? In front of the microcomputer, Faradin asked Boar. Boar thought for a moment and said, if Night still does not use his thunderstorm punch, then Shadow X will act. This is because both opponents are armed, and One Smile Kill's marksmanship is pretty good. Although it is a little inconceivable to use a gun in a double combat tournament, in reality, she will not lower her attack power just because of this. The number of people who fell to One Smile Kill's gun in close combat during the pre-match training is no less than 100. One Smile Kill's gun can be used as a blade, and when it comes to close combat, One Smile Kill will not lose to Lu Yewu. Although Boar was a military academy student, he had never underestimated the people of Sector B. He had done his research on the veteran experts of Sector B. It wasn't just Faradin and Boar. Kamas, Feng Haichao, Ryan, Bon, and the others were also watching this match in front of their microcomputers. They truly wanted to know just how strong Shadow X was. If they were not strong enough, they would not participate in the double combat. They would directly fight for the championship of the single combat. Because they had signed up for both projects. Under everyone's gaze, the duo of One Smile Kill and Lu Yewu walked into the arena. Their beautiful faces, tight-fitting midriff-bearing shorts, and beautiful waistlines were enough to attract everyone's attention even though they were just virtual characters. However, the next moment, the two people who appeared behind them took the spotlight. It was still the same costume, still the same generic robot appearance, but it directly moved the attention of the audience in front of the microcomputer directly away from the two beauties. Shadow X. You'll make a move this time, right? As usual, Shadow X and Night leisurely sauntered into the arena. The difference was that this time, it was Night's turn to stand at the edge of the arena with his arms crossed as if he was watching a show, while Shadow X walked step by step to the center of the arena. The people in front of the microcomputers were instantly excited. Oh, Shadow X is going to make a move this time, he's really going to make a move this time. Boar, Faradin, and the others subconsciously straightened their bodies and stared at the generic robot on the microcomputer screen without missing a single glance. As Shadow X approached, One Smile Kill and Lu Yewu who were standing side by side separated. One retreated backward, and the other moved forward. One Smile Kill's slender fingers hooked the twin pistols that were originally holstered on both sides of her thighs into her hands. She nimbly twirled the pistols between her fingers. From this practiced movement, it could be seen that One Smile Kill had been playing with guns for quite some time. But in Silen's eyes, this was nothing more than playing with guns. Meanwhile, Lu Yewu also took out her twin willow blades. In this era, there were very few people who could use such ancient weapons well. Those who used such weapons were usually the inheritors of some ancient branch. Lu Yewu looked at Shadow X who was calmly walking over at a steady pace, and suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of oppression and urgency. That expressionless white face and that excessively calm movements gave people a feeling that they couldn't see through him or see through him. If that was the case, Lu Yewu leaped into the air and unfurled her blades. The wind from the blades howled as the silvery white blades closed in on Shadow X. But very strangely, Shadow X did not seem to be afraid at all. He still carried that kind of seemingly careless movement, but his figure flashed when Lu Yewu's twin blades came slashing over. Bam! Lu Yewu was sent flying backwards towards where One Smile Kill was standing. The wind from the blades was disrupted. In that instant, just when Lu Yewu was confident that she could cut the opponent, Shadow X's instantaneous high-speed movement and an inexplicable force caused the blades to deviate from their original positions. At the same time, Shadow X's palm had already passed through the gap between the twin blades and slashed over. Lu Yewu had no choice but to raise her blades to block this attack. Although Shadow X's speed in dodging the blades was very fast, the attack he launched wasn't fast at all. However, Lu Yewu could feel the force of this palm. As expected, this force sent her flying straight away. While flying backwards, Lu Yewu was still wondering why One Smile Kill didn't shoot. It wasn't that One Smile Kill didn't want to shoot at that moment, but she couldn't find a point to shoot. Shadow X was almost completely blocked by Lu Yewu. Before this, there were many people who used similar methods to avoid One Smile Kill's gun, but they were all blown up by One Smile Kill. In that instant, One Smile Kill wanted to laugh, but she still couldn't see Shadow X's figure after she shifted her angle. Shadow X was a few steps away from Lu Yewu. As Lu Yewu retreated, he moved along with her, using Lu Yewu as a shield at all times so that One Smile Kill couldn't find an absolute killing point. If One Smile Kill fired recklessly, there was a high chance that she would hurt Lu Yewu. Lu Yewu sensed Shadow X's thoughts and slashed at the ground with one blade. She used the momentum to twist her waist and slashed at Shadow X. Even if this slash couldn't hit Shadow X, it would still force him out of that angle and allow One Smile Kill to find a point to shoot. However, impossible. Lu Yewu's eyes widened in shock as she stared at the tip of her blade caught between the opponent's two fingers. At the same time the tip of her blade was caught by the opponent, a pulling force came from the tip. Lu Yewu tightened her grip on the blade to prevent the opponent from pulling it away. In the next moment, a huge tremor traveled through the blade to the space between her thumb and forefinger. Her entire wrist felt like it was about to break. Lu Yewu felt her wrists go numb, and her blades left her body. Crack! A sound came from the gun in One Smile Kill's hand. However, it wasn't the sound of a bullet being fired. What followed was silence. Two blades. One pointed at Lu Yewu's forehead, and the other at One Smile Kill's neck artery. Chapter 59. Fast, too fast. Only a short 5 seconds had passed since Lu Yewu had launched her attack until now. 5 seconds. Some people yawned, and when they opened their eyes again, this was the situation. Before they could understand anything, before they could reflect on anything, it had already become like this. Lu Yewu's hands were still numb from being pointed between her eyebrows. She did not understand how Shadow X did it, or rather, she somewhat understood but was unwilling to believe it. Clamping the tip of a blade with 2 fingers. Was it really that easy to clamp? Such a situation had never happened even in the double combat tournament last year. She had to admit that Shadow X was very strong. A blade is a lethal weapon. If you can't activate its murderous aura, it's no different from a soft wooden stick in front of an expert. This was what her father once told her. Was this the situation he was talking about? Click. 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 Pack. One Smile Kill pulled the trigger repeatedly in disbelief. Then, the gun in her hand disintegrated and fell to the ground piece by piece. Not a single bullet was missing from the clip. Sillin pressed the tip of his blade closer. One Smile Kill was still far from it. Aflan's bodyguard knew that there was something wrong with his gun even without firing a shot. That was something that could only be detected by those who had played with guns to a certain degree. They would be able to detect even the tiniest of changes, unlike One Smile Kill who kept pulling the trigger in disbelief. This was the difference between realms. Hesitation, uncertainty, lack of ruthlessness, lack of killing intent when drawing the blade, lack of decisiveness when drawing the gun. This was a student's weakness. As the tip of the knife approached, One Smile Kill, who had only felt a chill before, could now feel blood flowing down the tip of the knife. Although it was only a virtual platform, the inertia and the pain transmitted by the sensors made her feel like she was bleeding. Lu Yewu and One Smile Kill could clearly feel the killing intent coming from the tip of the blade. If they did not admit defeat now, then this generic robot in front of them would really make them bleed in the arena. That would make them look even worse. Less than a minute had passed since the start of the match. One of them had lost both of her blades, and the other had not fired a single shot. Although they were very unwilling, the reality was right there. One Smile Kill and Lu Yewu admit defeat. The winner of this match is Knight and Shadow X. Many people were silent when they saw the words that popped up on the screen. To be exact, they had yet to react. Bull withdrew his gaze and sat in his chair, deep in thought. Shadow X had purposely pushed Lu Yewu back, or else he wouldn't have been so slow. However, what Boar didn't understand was that Shadow X clearly could have killed Lu Yewu in one hit. As long as that palm strike was just a little bit faster, Lu Yewu wouldn't have had the time to react and block the attack, and Lu Yewu would have basically lost all of her combat strength once the attack landed. Moreover, since he could easily dodge Lu Yewu's saber shadows and find the gaps between them, he could also dodge One Smile Kill's spear. The speed of Lu Yewu's saber was very fast. Ordinary people would not even be able to distinguish the real shadow in the saber shadow. Since Shadow X was able to dodge Lu Yewu's twin blades and attack through the gaps between them, Boar absolutely refused to believe that he couldn't dodge One Smile Kill's gun with that kind of speed and ease. In truth, a lot of people did not understand why Shadow X would use such a method to win this match. This method was a little cheap, a little despicable, and it even took advantage of the system's loopholes. Why did it take advantage of the system's loopholes? Shadow X's current generic robot body was relatively thin and not very tall. This way, it was very advantageous for him to hide beside Lu Yewu and avoid One Smile Kill's attack points. If it was his main body, perhaps One Smile Kill would still be able to find the attack points. There were also people who posted on the Sector Championship forums, accusing Shadow X of being too despicable and cruel. Not only did he win through tricks, he even used such a method to humiliate the two beauties. Both their blades were snatched away, not a single shot was fired, and their own blades were even pointed at their own glabella and neck. How could One Smile Kill and Lu Yewu endure this? When they saw this post, Kamas and Feng Haichao only smiled mockingly. If Shadow X really didn't hold back, how could One Smile Kill and Lu Yewu only be like this? Everything else aside, just the blade that was pointed at Lu Yewu alone. That blade could have directly slashed down from above. However, Shadow X obviously left the other party some face. He retracted his blade a little and merely pointed it at Lu Yewu's glabella. If it was night, he wouldn't care if you were a man or a woman or who you were. He would have sliced you in half with a single slash. What do you think? Kamas, who was in front of the microcomputer, asked Feng Haichao. Feng Haichao twirled his hat and said, "He's just playing. He's just playing. It's not just Shadow X, it's the same for Knight. Up until now, Knight has yet to use Thunderstorm Fist. No one knows to what extent Knight's Thunderstorm Fist has been trained. Knight's strength is indeed hard to estimate if Ji Feihang thinks so highly of him. Yu Lu, what do you think?" Kamas looked at Yu Lu, who had been sitting there and playing with his gun. Yu Lu did not participate in the duel. In fact, he did not even register his account on the Sector Championship platform for the past 3 years since he entered the military academy. However, Yu Lu was someone that even Kamas and Feng Haichao admired greatly. The first military academy's sharpshooter Yu Lu's name resounded throughout the entire Sector C. The reason why Yu Lu had never been interested in the Sector Championship was because there was no shooting competition on the Sector Championship platform. Yu Lu's head was lowered and his eyes were drooping. He looked like he was asleep, but his hands were not slow at all. When a handgun was tossed into the air, it was in parts, but when it landed back on the ground, it was perfectly assembled. Moreover, Yu Lu was only playing with the gun with one hand. His finger movements were so fast that even Kamas had to admit his inferiority. Yu Lu's other hand was supporting his chin, giving off an impression of laziness, as if he would sleep whenever he was tired. However, those who knew Yu Lu knew not to provoke him even when he was asleep. Many people had seen Yu Lu playing with his gun like this even when he was asleep, and when a soccer ball was kicked at him, he instinctively shot it and exploded it. Hearing Kamas' question, Yu Lu spent a great deal of effort to open his eyelids and look at Kamas. Ah. What did you say? He had only heard it as a question just now. Kamas and Feng Haichao, as expected, this fellow fell asleep again. Feng Haichao rubbed his forehead helplessly. Kamas is asking about your opinion of the match just now. Opinion? Yu Lu scratched his face with the hand supporting his chin. Shadow X is very strong. It's really not easy to make you say the words very strong. What else? Feng Haichao asked again. Yu Lu yawned and stretched. I only watched Shadow X, meaning that he did not look at the others at all. As expected, the other three people in the arena were ignored again. Sigh, why was it again? Yu Lu stood up from his chair. With a flick of his fingers, the gun that was still parts just now fell into his hand. He skillfully stuffed the gun into his wide trouser pocket. Every time they saw Yu Lu put the gun into his wide trouser pocket, Kamas and Feng Haichao's eyes would twitch uncontrollably. Bro, aren't you afraid of misfiring? That's very close to his crotch. Yu Lu stretched his arms for a bit and let out another big yawn. Then, he lazily walked to the microcomputer and pulled up the battle footage he recorded just now. He slowed down one of the clips and pointed at one of Shadow X's movements. He's the second person I've seen in my age group who can use a gun like that. Feng Haichao and Kamas moved closer. It was the scene of Shadow X snatching Lu Yewu's twin blades and pointing them at Lu Yewu and One Smile Kill. When Shadow X pointed his blade at One Smile Kill, there was a moment when his hand brushed past One Smile Kill's gun. After that moment, One Smile Kill pulled the trigger, but no bullets were fired. At the same time, Shadow X's blade was placed beside her carotid artery. In other words, Shadow X had moved One Smile Kill's gun in that instant, but One Smile Kill did not notice it at all. With such hand speed, and with a single hand holding a blade, he could dismantle a gun. No wonder Yu Lu said that Shadow X was very strong. Feng Haichao and Kamas stared thoughtfully at the screen for a while. When they came back to themselves, they asked curiously, you said that Shadow X is the second person you've seen in your age group who can use a gun like that. Then who's the other one? Yu Lu walked leisurely to the storage cabinet to grab some food. He was hungry after a nap. There's another one from Sector B. His name is C.I. Jincheng. Chapter 60. No matter how the others discussed the match, Silin and the others did not care. As usual, they continued to do their own things after the match was over. The moment the match was over, Lung immediately called Silin and Knight's communicator. Judging from his high-pitched voice and two eyebrows that were about to fly off, he must have gained a lot this time. The truth was as such. Lung was so happy that his mouth was cramping. The odds of the previous few bets weren't high, and he didn't earn much money. But this time, Lung bet that Shadow X would win in 1 minute, and the opponent wouldn't fire a single shot. The odds were very high, and Lung bet all 4 of their money on it. After the match was over, Lung's mouth couldn't close even once when he saw the amount on his card. This was also why Silin chose to win in such a way. After the match was over, the Sector Championship forum was filled with posts related to the match. The news of Pride winning the mech battle and entering the quarterfinals was directly trampled down to the ground. There were praises and criticisms. But there was one point that resonated with everyone, and that was, the match ended too quickly. It was less than a minute from the start of the system's announcement to the end of the match, and within this 1 minute, both sides had actually fought for less than 5 seconds. What kind of concept was 5 seconds? Some people just turned their heads away and chatted for a bit, and when the screen cut back to them, they discovered that the match was over. I shouldn't have. There was a deep depression that felt like the match was over the second they closed their eyes and opened them again. Although they could watch a recording, watching a live broadcast and a recorded broadcast were two completely different moods. They had completely lost that kind of nervous and excited feeling. Therefore, after this match, everyone came to a conclusion, and that was to never slip away when watching Shadow X's gladiator fights in the future. Even a second could mean missing out on an exciting killing blow. Following Shadow X's performance in this match, some analytics-loving people began to analyze Shadow X's strength and his personality in real life from many aspects. But they still couldn't come up with a conclusion. There was just too little information about Shadow X. It was because of this that some people began to offer a high bounty for the truth about Shadow X. The moment this bounty was announced, the people of Seven Lights were in an uproar. In reality, before the other people of Seven Lights were officially in an uproar, less than 2 seconds after the bounty was announced, Silen's communicator rang. "Silen, don't ruin your future for a little bit of money." As soon as he connected, he heard Lung howling at the top of his lungs. Silen pulled the communicator away a little and looked at the 7-digit bounty on the forum. "You call this a little bit of money?" Without waiting for Silen to say anything, Lung's lips moved non-stop, carrying out a long-term analysis and macroscopic explanation to Silen. In conclusion, if he were to reveal his identity now, it would be disadvantageous to the bet. Silen picked his ear. "Got it. I'm not planning to stand out right now." "That's good." Lung heaved a sigh of relief. "I'll go and study the situation of the next bet. You can continue working." Beep, Silen looked at the disconnected communicator and curled his lips. "This bastard." He put the communicator aside and began to assemble the parts on the desk. Silen had modified the study a little, turning it into a dual-use study and workshop. He had to fight in the sector championship, but he also had to complete the mission that Sir Mo had assigned to him. Otherwise, with Sir Mo's awkward temperament, he would definitely feel that he was being neglected. If that happened, then Silen could forget about participating in the sector championship. While he was assembling the parts, the dormitory's doorbell rang. Normally speaking, the doorbell of Silen's dormitory would never ring. There had been no visitors until now. Even if there were, they would bring them in personally. For example, Surd and Hard. After that mission, Knight had brought them to the dormitory for a drink. As for Pride, unless you personally invite him, that fellow will not deign to pay you a visit. After the doorbell rang a few times, Knight turned on the dormitory's intercom and said from upstairs, "Silen, I'm about to challenge that brat Pride to a mech fight right now." Knight meant that he was busy and did not have the heart to open the door. The more subtle meaning was that if you are busy too, please ignore it. Silen did not stop what he was doing immediately. He had the security system turn on the screen to show who the visitor was. When Silen saw the person on the screen, he smiled slightly. "He's here so soon. That's fine too. Saves you guys the trouble of guessing blindly." The people of Seven Lights had always been extremely curious about Shadow X's identity. To think that such an expert was hiding in their school. The bounty aside, right now Shadow X was the most mysterious and highly watched person on the sector championship platform. If they could find out Shadow X's true identity and reveal it himself, then their fame would rise greatly as well. To find out Shadow X's true identity and hack into the sector championship platform system? Unlikely. The sector championship platform system was jointly built by the professionals of Sector B and Sector C. Its defenses were incredibly strong. If hacking didn't work, then what about connections? Some people who relied on their good background tried to establish a connection with the sector championship platform's maintainers, but they could not come to a conclusion. Although the sector championship platform's maintainers could not publicly reveal a student's information, they could still investigate it. However, they discovered that Shadow X's information was protected by many layers of additional protection, and those complicated procedures were very difficult to decode. Since neither of these two methods worked, then the most direct way was to look for Knight. Moreover, Knight was the kind of person who dared to flip a table and pull out a gun even in front of Seven Light's headmaster. Moreover, he had a very deep military background. Everyone knew this, so even though they were very curious about Shadow X's identity, not many people dared to ask Knight directly. Although they dared not provoke Knight, there was one thing that many people knew, and that was the four most awesome people in Seven Light's dormitory. Beating around the bush should work, right? No one dared to provoke Knight, and Ci Jincheng was not on planet Seven Lights. Ask Andrira Lung. No, they would be fooled until they couldn't even tell their feet from their head. If that was the case, then they could only look for Duan Silin. The first person to inquire about Shadow X was none other than Alan, his family's electronic magazine owner. Alan had already guessed Shadow X's identity from the moment Shadow X entered the sector championship platform's top 3 in just 3 days, but he never came to a conclusion. Later, when Shadow X teamed up with Knight to participate in the double combat tournament, Alan once again began to suspect the possibility of Silin being Shadow X. Silin led Alan through the door, but did not let Alan sit in the living room. Instead, he brought him to his own study. Silin, the Boston ivy outside your dormitory is growing really well. It's just as the rumors say. Alan chose a starting topic. It's just a coincidence. Silin passed a cup to Alan. There are fruit juice, milk, beer, tea, and so on in the water dispenser. Pour whatever you want, don't be shy. Okay. Alan looked at Silin's study while he was collecting the fruit juice from the water dispenser. There weren't a lot of books, and parts were piled on the table. The other places in the study were also filled with sorted parts. Seeing that Silin had sat down beside the table and was assembling the parts again, Alan felt a little embarrassed, as if he had disturbed Silin's work. About that. I'm sorry to have disturbed you. It's fine. I can talk when I'm assembling parts. Silin turned his head and said to Alan. His hands were still moving quickly, proving that he was not lying. Alan admired Silin. He knew who Silin's current instructor was, and he must have genuine talent to be able to follow Professor Mo. However, when he saw Silin assembling the parts with his own eyes, Alan had a different feeling. He truly felt as if he was looking at an elegant piece of art. Silin's hands were moving very quickly and precisely. The parts could be seen jumping between his fingers, and he was assembling them in the next moment. As he watched, Alan began to get lost in thought, as if he had been sucked into the whirlpool formed by Silin's fast hands and those parts. Although he was still watching Silin's hands assembling the parts, Alan's eyes had already begun to lose focus. Alan would never have thought that he would be unknowingly hypnotized just by watching Silin's assembling movements. Chapter 61. Silin shook his arms and looked very tired. I've finally assembled another one. Oh right, Alan, are you hungry? Although Alan was completely hypnotized right now, and Silin could completely understand the opinions and speculations of the other people in Seven Lights about Shadow X from Alan's mouth, Silin did not ask Alan anything about Shadow X. For a person like Alan, talking about those things might cause Alan's subconscious to rebound, and it would appear that Silin was hiding something. The crowd continued to struggle over Shadow X's true identity, but the sector championship was still going on. Knight was the only one who fought in the last 2 matches, but he was forced to use Thunderstorm Punch at the very last moment of one of the matches. Although it was just a fist shadow with lightning and he did not use Thunderstorm Punch in its entirety, it was enough to excite some of the students. TCH, Knight's face was full of disdain. You may look like a decent kid, but you're actually very evil and full of evil ideas. Those people who were tricked by you are still laughing and counting their money for you. When he was assembling in front of Alan, Silen's hand speed couldn't be considered fast. It was much slower than when he was assembling in front of Mo Hung. The reason he slowed down was so that Alan's eyes could keep up with his hand speed. Crack, Alan carefully looked at the stony-faced knight. As expected, he was terrifying. No wonder those people did not dare to ask him directly. Ahem. I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm here to look for Silen. Silen's voice turned deep as he said unhurriedly, these parts must be assembled today. This is the mission my instructor gave me. There are a lot of parts, aren't there? Ah. Silen, there's no need to trouble yourself. I'll leave after a chat. In reality, what Silen said to Alan was not false. It could only be said that it was a little one-sided. Alan woke up to the sound, and he saw a fully assembled machine on the table in front of his eyes. Silen had moved it into a big box, and there were already a few similar machines inside the box wrapped in shockproof bags. Looking at the date written on the shockproof bags, Alan blushed with shame. It looked like Silen was really busy from day to night. Although he was a little absent-minded, Alan remembered what Silen had said to him and how he had answered. Looking at those spare parts and the assembled machinery in the study again, Alan felt that he was worrying too much. There was no way Silen was Shadow X, didn't he see how busy he was? He had only mentioned that Professor Mo did not wish for him to participate in the sector championship, but he had not mentioned whether he would participate or not. As for the fact that he didn't see Knight often but was very familiar with him. Well, it was true. Before the sector championship, aside from that mission, most of the time they kept in touch through the communicator. Even during the few days of the sector championship, Knight would return to his study right after the tournament to start working on the mission Mo Hung had given him. They would only see each other for less than an hour every day. The further they went, the stronger the opponents they would meet. Although the system assigned them randomly, some of the veteran powerhouses and teams with high win rates would still be separated, so that they would not meet each other too early. However, with the appearance of the top 32, the flames of war in the sector championship were officially ignited. This was because after the top 32 had been decided, the fighters would draw their own lots. It was possible that the first match would be an extremely strong fight against an extremely strong one. After staring at the jerky in Alan's hand for a moment, Knight wandered into the kitchen to get some food. He was obviously hungry after challenging Pride's fighter. However, when he saw Alan sitting in the living room, Knight's face immediately darkened. What's going on? Let's go to the living room. As he spoke, Silen opened the storage cabinet in the study, only to find a small bag of red bean buns lying all alone inside. You want to ask about Shadow X, don't you? Silen interrupted Alan's words. I can't say anything about Shadow X. I've promised them. The human brain was a very peculiar thing. Humans only had a small understanding of the brain. Even when the other party was hypnotized, one should not be presumptuous enough to think that one had complete control over the other party's thoughts. Different people had different ways of dealing with it. This was what Genya had told Silen when he was teaching Silen about hypnosis. I gave him the jerky in his hand, he didn't take it himself. There are still a lot of them in the storage cabinet. Don't be so stingy. Silen said calmly. Yeah, there are a lot of parts. I spend most of my time assembling these parts every day. I don't have much time to do anything else. Silen's hand movements were still the same as before. My mentor Professor Mo doesn't like me to participate in the sector championship. It was only when Alan looked at the time again that he realized that more than 2 hours had actually passed. When he thought back, the only thing he could remember was Silen assembling the parts. He actually stared at Silen assembling for 2 hours straight. That was why Silen had only used a curvilinear method and told Alan some seemingly irrelevant things. He wanted Alan to deduce the conclusion that Silen could not possibly be Shadow X from these things. Alan's hand trembled when he saw Knight. He could feel the anger emanating from Knight's body. Could it be that Knight did not like visitors? Alan let out 2 dry laughs. It's mainly because we were too curious. We didn't even know that there was such an awesome person in Seven Lights. Due to Scyllane's deliberate misdirection, Alan had indeed excluded Scyllane from the scope of his suspicion. It looked like Scyllane was in a difficult position, so the people of Seven Lights had shifted their target. Then, when Alan placed his attention on the movements of Scyllane's hands, Scyllane's assembling movements began to change slowly. Without Alan noticing in the slightest, Alan's hand's speed changed in a regular pattern. Matching this rhythm, the specific jumping of the parts and the trajectory of his hand shadows, Alan's consciousness was slowly drawn into a whirlpool. Alan nodded, but his eyes were still unfocused as if he was in a half-asleep, half-awake trance state. Thanks. Alan accepted the jerky and water cup from Scyllane. He paused for a moment before asking, "Have you logged on to the Sector Championship platform before, Scyllane?" 20 of the top 32 groups were from Sector C, 3 were from the 10 trade sectors, and 9 were from Sector B. The opponent Scyllane and Knight encountered in the top 16 out of the top 32 was a group from the 10 trade sectors. It was also the group with the best record out of the 3 trade sectors groups. Just like Scyllane's group, they maintained a perfect record. Thank you for the compliment. That bastard aura of yours was too strong. I couldn't stand it, so I ran away immediately. Alan. Is this the point? I knew I was overthinking things. A person as big as him can't even compare to a bag of jerky. While they were talking, Knight came bouncing down from upstairs while humming a little tune. It looked like he had won the fight against Pride. Knight did not see Alan's figure when he came out, he left so soon. Scyllane said that he promised them and not him. This further convinced Alan that Scyllane was not Shadow X. Them should be referring to Knight and Shadow X. Scyllane threw a bag at him. What do you mean by what? Do I look that bad to you? Scyllane took out 2 bags of jerky from the kitchen's storage cabinet and handed one to Alan. Don't give me that. When did you become so bashful? This jerky is not bad. Try it. You're overthinking. I'm just impressed by my extraordinary logical reasoning ability. What did you do to that kid? Knight sat on the sofa and swung his legs while chewing on the jerky and asked. I'll let you in on a secret. Although Shadow X and Knight are very familiar with each other, they don't meet often. While Knight went to the kitchen, Alan immediately stood up and excused himself. He felt prickles all over his body the moment he saw Knight. Knight's aura was too strong. Chapter 62. The team that Scyllane and Knight were about to face was a little special. They came from the 10 trade sectors, and those who could stand out in the 10 trade sectors were definitely not inferior to some of the people from the military academies. Another special characteristic was that there was a non-average human in this team. His ID was Octopus, an octopus. His name was the same as his own, but he had 2 more pairs of hands than the average human. Furthermore, the octopus were more robust, belonging to the category of strength and speed. His performance in the previous matches had been very eye-catching. But Scyllane's attention was on the other person in this team. ID Koi behind the smile. Although he had attacked many times in the previous matches, his performance was far less eye-catching than Octopus. Scyllane had a feeling from watching the recordings of the previous matches that this person was definitely not inferior to Octopus. He was also a rather low-key person. This feeling of Scyllane's was confirmed during the Sector Championship platform tournament. Koi behind the smile and Octopus entered the arena before Scyllane and Knight. Octopus was moving his body. His 6 arms were very eye-catching, and Scyllane noticed that his 6 arms had a wide range of movement and were very agile. It would be a little troublesome to find an attack point from behind. Unlike Octopus, Koi behind the smile stood there quietly. When he saw Scyllane and Knight enter the arena, Koi behind the smile raised his hand in a greeting gesture. However, after seeing Koi behind the smile's gesture, Scyllane narrowed his eyes. When Koi behind the smile raised his arm, his fingers moved slightly. The others would not notice. Forget about whether they could capture that momentary movement, who would notice the minute movements of a person's fingers when he raised his hand in greeting before the match had even begun. But Silen's habits prevented him from overlooking every minute movement of his opponent, especially the fingers. Never ignore a hunter's finger. Even if they only had one finger, they could easily kill someone without being noticed. Coy behind the smile's finger movement was the secret code of the 6th team of Vanguard. So, Silen made a hello gesture. Similarly, when he raised his hand, his fingers also moved rapidly. Coy behind the smile was momentarily surprised. Not bad, he figured it out so quickly. Originally, he did not expect Silen to be able to see the hidden meaning behind that gesture. As expected of someone that the captain thought highly of. You deal with 8 arms, I'll deal with the other one, Silen said to Knight. Knight raised an eyebrow. This wasn't how the previous arrangement was supposed to be, but since Silen said so, Knight didn't object. He wondered how Lung's reaction would be after the match ended. After both sides were ready, the system displayed a countdown of 10 seconds. During these 10 seconds, while Coquettish Smile was stretching his arms, Shadow X was also stretching his limbs. While the two of them seemed to be warming up for the match, they had already communicated with each other more than 10 times. Their fingers moved very quickly, and in an instant, they had completed hundreds of secret codes. Eyesight, mental arithmetic, and reflexes were all conditions that had to be met. If any of them could not keep up, there would be a gap in communication. Capturing the hundreds of codes made by the other party in an instant, then converting these codes into information, processing the information, and then responding to the other party. This was a test of a person's ability. However, after the match officially began, the two of them stopped communicating with each other. After all, the surveillance on the Sector Championships platform would be a lot stricter when the match officially began, and they would officially record the match. As for those warm-up activities before the match, they wouldn't be recorded. This was also why Coquettish Smile chose to communicate with Silen at that time. Knight immediately rushed up and fought 8 arms. There weren't many octopus in the army, and it was very rare to see one. But since he was able to meet an octopus here, Knight couldn't let go of this great opportunity. This was a new attempt. Knight was very excited as he fought, and 8 arms was obviously about the same. The more they fought, the more excited they became, and the faster they fought. 8 arms certainly had the strength. When lightning appeared in Knight's fists, 8 arms still seemed to be holding back. Compared to Knight and 8 Claws, Shadow X and Coquettish Smile's side were also fighting very quickly and fiercely, but they didn't look as flashy as Knight's Thunderstorm Punch, nor did they look as special as 8 Claws' 6 arms. Coquettish Smile and Shadow X's fight couldn't be said to be boring. Every move they made could be used as a teaching demonstration, but Boar and the others just felt that it was very strange and awkward. It wasn't Shadow X's style in their imagination. 8 arms' performance gradually faltered under Knight's fierce offensive. After being pushed back by Knight's punch, 8 arms and Coquettish Smile chose to surrender. Knight obviously felt that the fight wasn't over yet, and he was very dissatisfied when he heard the system's voice announcing the end of the match. He felt that 8 arms could still hold on, and shouldn't be at this level. During the clash with 8 arms, he felt the endurance of 8 arms' muscles. Although Knight was confident that he could win against 8 arms if the fight continued, Knight was a little dissatisfied that 8 arms surrendered just like that. To put it bluntly, he hadn't fought enough. Although the match looked very exciting and dazzling, he felt that something was missing. Something's wrong. In front of the microcomputer, Kamas said with a frown. Feng Haichao nodded. It feels a little flashy but impractical. Although both sides fought with great vigor and intensity, it's not what we wanted to see. Maybe our expectations are too high. Regardless of how this match was received, Coquettish Smile and 8 arms had completed their mission. Both of them were members of Vanguard Division 6, and because they met the age requirement, they were sent to the academy by Shoten to study. Normally, hunters wouldn't participate in these matches, but this time, Shoten had the two of them bring a message to Silen. A very important message. Assassination, Level 1 alert. Assassination, Level 1 alert. This was what Coquettish Smile wanted to convey to Sillin. As for what rank they got, whether they won or lost, they didn't care. They weren't interested either. After the match ended, Sillin immediately received a complaint from Lung. Due to the last-minute change in battle plan, Lung had earned a lot less money this time. However, Lung didn't ask Sillin's reasons for doing so, and continued to analyze the next match. Knight didn't feel satisfied after the match, so he went to the fighter jet training field to pick out fighter jets with some people from the military academy. Many of these people were Knight's former classmates, and after watching the match, they would gather again to pick out fighter jets and armor. This was something they used to do when they were still in the intermediate education school, but now that they were in the advanced education school, they had much less free time. Now that they finally had the sector championships platform, they definitely had to make the most of their time. However, Knight never revealed Shadow X's true identity, and because of this, he was even surrounded and killed by a few of his friends at the fighter jet training field. "Knight, I'm going out for a walk, and I'll drop by the supermarket on the way. There's no stock in the cabinet, do you want me to bring anything?" asked Sillin as he pushed open the door. "Just bring me an extra portion of whatever you want to buy." "Buy more jerky?" Knight roared without turning his head. He was now fighting hard with a few friends from the military academy at the fighter jet training field, and he had to get his revenge for the ambush from the last time. Sillin walked out of the dormitory. He suddenly felt a little stuffy today, so he came out for a walk and a breath of fresh air. That was why he didn't use the delivery method. Right now it was nighttime, and there weren't many people around, but the supermarket was open day and night. However, Sillin hadn't taken a few steps when his communicator rang. There was no image, only an encrypted message, a line of words and a picture. The picture indicated a certain place in the forest between Seven Lights Business District and Entertainment District, Sleepless City. "Teresa is in our hands. You have 1 hour. Chapter 63. The message disappeared automatically after it was displayed, and the signal could not be traced. It seemed that this group had made ample preparations. An hour. The other party did not give Sillin any extra time to prepare at all. Moreover, it was 3 days earlier than Coquettish Smile said. Sillin returned to the accommodation, took out the modified hoverboard and left a message on the message machine. If he could not return by then, the message machine would tell Knight what to do. Sillin did not bring his communicator. It was too easily exposed. After the modification, the hoverboard was installed with a silencer drive, and its energy system was improved as well. Sillin stepped on the hoverboard and flashed into the night, flying towards the location marked on the map. At a certain academy dormitory in Sector D of the 10 trade sectors, Coquettish Smile sat inelegantly on a chair and was talking to his communicator. "I've already passed the message over. He should know what to do." The Coquettish Smile and 8 Tentacles had joined the sector championship purely for fun. Although most hunters did not participate in that kind of competition, 8 Tentacles and Coquettish Smile were just too bored. Moreover, the incident with Shadow X before the start of the sector championship had piqued their curiosity, which was why they had signed up. They did not expect to receive a mission to deliver a secret code, and even more surprisingly, the legendary Shadow X was actually their teammate. Coquettish Smile and 8 Tentacles had never planned to perform too well on the sector championship platform. They were just too lucky that the opponents they encountered were not strong, and even the military academy students were not strong. That was why they were able to enter the top 32. Even without the mission to pass a secret code, the duo did not plan to continue fighting. Exposing their true strength in front of everyone was not a hunter's way of doing things. As for how far Sillin was going to fight, the duo had no interest in knowing. They did not know what the other said, but Coquettish Smile sat up with a frown. "Didn't you say it's 3 days later? All right, I'll pay attention to his situation on the sector championship platform. If he doesn't show up by tomorrow, then, all right, got it." "What's wrong?" 8 Tentacles looked at Coquettish Smile, who had been sitting there motionlessly since the call ended. Coquettish smile sighed, something happened to the sugar daddy, and the assassination was brought forward. I don't know the specifics, and the spies the captain arranged in 7 Lights could not contact Scylla either. Based on those people's habits, if he doesn't show up for tomorrow's round of 16 advancement, it stands to reason that he won't show up again. If he appears, it would mean that the Blackthorn Assassin organization has completely disappeared from the assassin ranking. Yes, but what are the chances of that happening? He smiled coquettishly without saying a word. Scylla arrived at the edge of the forest between the business district and the entertainment city. After arriving at the edge of the forest, he put away the hoverboard, put his coat and hoverboard into the ring, and rushed into the dense forest. In the depths of the dense forest, 3 people dressed in black were whispering something. Next to them, Teresa was lying there with her hands and feet tied up. Her hair was a little messy, and her body was covered in dust and grass, but her eyes still looked very energetic. She had only suffered some superficial wounds, and everything else was fine. Before they met Scylla, the people of Blackthorn wouldn't kill Teresa just yet. Teresa also knew that it was best for her to be obedient given her current situation. If she were to be discovered with any little tricks, these people would kill her without hesitation. She didn't think that the Duance family would contact the Blackthorn that was almost at the end of its rope. Last time, they failed in their mission to assassinate Scylla, were oppressed by many parties, and were encircled by their peers. Their remaining combat strength was no longer enough for the Blackthorn to remain on the assassin ranking. But when they were almost completely annihilated, Aflon's competitors in the family gave them a helping hand. Although she didn't know the details, Teresa could guess that this matter must have been a deal between the Duance family and the Blackthorn. Without their interference, there was no way that the Blackthorn alone could sneak into Planet 7 Lights so easily. Brown Thorn, how is it? One of them asked. Teresa looked up, but she couldn't see the person's face clearly in the darkness of the night. The person was walking very quickly, but Teresa didn't hear any footsteps at all. It was as if a ghost had floated over. Brown Thorn glanced at Teresa, who was lying obediently on the ground without any little tricks, before turning back to his companions. That guy has arrived, but according to Eagle Thorn, that guy disappeared after he landed on a hoverboard. Disappeared? I can't find him. I can't even detect the hoverboard. It's as if this person never appeared. But Eagle Thorn definitely saw that guy come into the forest on a hoverboard just a moment ago. Brown Thorn was very puzzled as well. Tiger Thorn, the person who spoke just now, smiled savagely. This young master does have some skill. Otherwise, Soft Thorn and the others wouldn't have failed. The Soft Thorn Tiger Thorn was talking about was the woman who pretended to be a nurse during the biochemical base mission. What do we do now? Brown Thorn asked. Tell Eagle Thorn and the others to pay attention and not fail miserably. Otherwise, they will learn from Soft Thorn's mistakes. This is our last chance. At the end of his sentence, Tiger Thorn's voice was already filled with dense killing intent. Blackthorn's leader was being watched too closely by all parties, so he didn't come to Planet 7 Lights with them. Tiger Thorn was in charge of the operation this time, and Brown Thorn was assisting him. Although it had been a while since night had fallen over at the school zone and the dormitory zone, night had only just fallen over this part of the forest. After bursting into the forest, Scylla was not in a hurry to find his target. Instead, he silently passed through the forest in search of something. Scylla found what he was looking for at a big tree with lush branches and leaves. There was a hole in the tree trunk, and some little things would fly around the hole from time to time. They were a kind of flying ant different from termites. They were the original inhabitants of Planet 7 Lights, and their bodies were only a few millimeters long. The largest ones were no bigger than a centimeter, and their adult form had wings that were slightly longer than their bodies. Their wings would not fall off either, and they also had well-developed upper jaws. They didn't like light, and they had a wide diet. They were exactly what Scylla was looking for. He sprayed a kind of odorless potion inside and around the hole. When it came into contact with these flying ants, the potion formed a thin crystalline membrane on the surface of their bodies. Then, it slowly turned from a solid state to a gaseous state as time passed. This sublimated gas had no effect on the flying ants, but it was different for the human body. After the human body inhaled this gas, they would exhale another kind of gas that excited these little fellows, just like how a human body inhales oxygen and exhales carbon dioxide. The human body wouldn't feel any discomfort, but they would unwittingly become these little fellows' target. Other than the flying ant nest inside the tree hole, Silen had found a few other ant nests and treated them in the same way. This was the edge of the forest, and the little fellows would fly deeper into the forest in search of food at night. Moreover, the night wind would carry their scent even further into the forest. Right now, it was just nightfall in the forest, and the little fellows still had plenty of time to move around. On the first day Silen arrived at 7 Lights, he had paid special attention to these flying ants when he was inspecting the terrain. The forest was the best place to settle a grudge in secret, and it was also the easiest place to avoid satellite surveillance. There were a lot of flying ants in this forest, and Silen had analyzed them a long time ago and designed this potion based on their physiological parameters. Even Mo Hung didn't know that Silen had assembled his own medicine synthesizer. If he knew, he would definitely be so happy that he would run out and show it off. This was because a medicine synthesizer required a higher level of precision, and it normally required at least 3 people to assemble it. In reality, this was not the only medicine that Silen had synthesized. He would only use it when he was free or when he was in a hurry. He would never fight a battle unprepared. Silen had stored all of these synthesized medicines inside Jenya's leaf-patterned ring. Silen didn't know how many people were hiding in this forest, but judging from the information he obtained from Koi behind the smile, there were definitely no less than 10. These people were cold, decisive, and most importantly, they hid very well. Infrared detectors could not detect them. Without external support, Silen would be in a very difficult situation. One careless mistake and he would lose his life. However, most of the time, the ones who could help us were not necessarily people. Silen watched the little fellows fly into the distance before he slipped into the forest in a flash. The hunt had begun. Chapter 64. The medicine would not take effect so quickly. After all, this forest was huge. Perhaps many flying ants would not touch those people at all, but a single one of them would cause a chain reaction. Without other backup, Silen had to complete the preliminary preparations in order to obtain victory in this hunt. Along the way, Silen would spray the medicine whenever he came across a nest of flying ants, allowing the flying ants to carry the medicine crystals into the depths of the forest and increase his chances of success. Silen was not in a hurry. Blackthorn's men did not tell him why they wanted him to come within an hour, so he was patiently making preparations. From the moment he received the message to the moment he snuck into the forest, Silen took less than 50 minutes in total. It was twice as fast as 7 Lights' direct flying car. The place marked on the map was the depths of the forest, and there was no way they could reach there in 10 minutes. Moreover, the other party's goal was obviously not here. The reason they told Silen an hour was so that Silen would not have the time to look for help. As long as they could see Silen's figure within an hour, those people would not care about Teresa. After all, Silen was their biggest target. They did not have any way to contact him. They knew that Silen had reached the forest, but they did not show up to explain, negotiate, or communicate with him. They only had one goal, and that was to kill Silen. The other places in 7 Lights were closely monitored by the security squads, so this was the best place to settle things. Time passed slowly, but Eagle Thorn did not discover any trace of Silen at all. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. After discovering no abnormalities in the surroundings, Eagle Thorn was about to contact his companions when he raised his hand and discovered that there were a few flying ants on his arm. He shook them off with a light shake, but this was just the beginning. One after another, flying ants flew towards him. His arm, his pants, his back, his mask, flying ants began to fall everywhere. Due to the hasty operation this time, Eagle Thorn did not know this forest well. He thought that he might have accidentally run into a nest of flying ants, so he retreated dozens of meters back. But the situation did not improve. The number of flying ants landing on his mask grew, and it seriously interfered with Eaglethorn's vision. Just as he was about to wipe it off, Eaglesting suddenly felt a sense of danger. This was an instinct that had been cultivated from many years of experience. Eaglethorn quickly jumped away from where he was and dodged a few times. However, the angles of the needles flying toward him were too tricky, and they were not in a straight line. They were very fast, and Eaglethorn managed to dodge the first few needles. However, one of the needles still managed to pierce through his arm and cut through his skin, leaving 2 holes in his camouflage suit. It was a kind of needle with 3 sharp points protruding from 3 sides. However, when these needles pierced into tree trunks or hit rocks, they would shatter, then slowly melt and disappear. As Eaglethorn moved swiftly, he took out some medicine and sprayed it on the wound. The medicine quickly formed a layer of membrane around the wound, sealing it and preventing blood from flowing out. It also kept the wound under control so that even if the needle was poisoned, it would not spread too quickly. Eaglethorn's reaction speed could not be said to be slow, and his movements were also very skillful. He almost did not make a sound, and with a few flashes, he hid behind a large tree, keeping an eye on his surroundings. He still did not discover the other party. Eaglethorn did not dare to be careless. People nowadays preferred to use guns, and even their Blackthorn preferred to use guns to finish off their targets. However, Eaglethorn also knew that anyone who could use such an ancient hidden weapon was obviously not a pushover. In fact, Eaglethorn even felt that Scylla was more like a killer. He was silent, calm, and hiding in an even darker place, watching them. However, Eaglethorn was only wary of Scylla, and ignored the flying ants that were landing on his body one after another. The wound was sealed with medicine, but the 2 holes on the camouflage suit provided the flying ants with a convenient way to enter. Eaglethorn was starting to feel that something was wrong. The biting of the flying ants was itchy and painful, and it was starting to spread all over his body. One after another, the flying ants landed on Eaglethorn's body in search of entry points. His shoes, his trousers, the holes that were pierced, and so on. In order to prevent himself from being ambushed again, Eaglethorn endured the discomfort that was a mixture of pain and itch. He tried his best to calm himself down and ignore those feelings, but he found it harder and harder to control his emotions. Eaglethorn hoped that Scylla would act quickly, so that he could move a little and shake off those flying ants. However, Scylla did not move at all after that, just like a hunter quietly watching a trapped beast struggle. The flying ant's venom was not fatal, but it would stimulate a person's nerves and make them feel anxious. Now, Eaglethorn was clearly developing in the direction of anxiety. Eaglethorn knew that the other party was waiting for the moment when he could not endure it any longer and would deliver a fatal blow. However, the feeling of being bitten by thousands of flying ants was truly worse than death. If it was a normal person, they would have long since given up and would rather commit suicide than endure such torture. His mask was full of sweat. Eaglethorn did not know how long he could endure it, the venom had already begun to stimulate his nerves. Eaglethorn gritted his teeth, took a deep breath, and ran far away in a flash. Running without a fixed path would allow him to better avoid being targeted by the other party. He had to get rid of those flying ants inside his mask first, or else he would definitely be the one to lose if this dragged on. A flying ant bit through the breathing hole on his mask and crawled in, burrowing into Eaglethorn's nostrils. Eaglethorn's sprinting footsteps came to a halt, and it was also in this instant that a needle pierced through his throat. The fresh blood made these flying ants even more excited, because the flowing blood had a scent that they liked. More and more flying ants landed on Eaglethorn's body, densely covering the surface of Eaglethorn's body. Eaglethorn soon stopped breathing. After determining that Eaglethorn had lost all signs of life, Scylla scuttled out and walked to Eaglethorn's side. Eaglethorn was wearing a special camouflage suit that was infrared resistant and would change color depending on the environment. Eaglethorn had a silenced gun in his hands, but Scylla did not touch it. This gun had been modified, and there was a miniature self-destruct device installed inside. Scylla did not want to keep a bomb by his side. Scylla found another infrasonic gun on Eagle Thorn's body, and put it away after giving it a look. He could take this one. In the depths of the forest, Tiger Thorn's expression was very gloomy, because the light dot representing Eagle Thorn on his life watch the size of a pocket watch had gone out, which meant that Eagle Thorn was dead. Eagle Thorn has fallen. How is this possible? Brown Thorn ran over and looked at the life watch in Tiger Thorn's hands. Looking at the extinguished light, Brown Thorn paused for a moment. I'll go take care of that guy. Since even Eagle Thorn had fallen, then the others might not necessarily be able to get away with it. He could only do it himself. The person beside Tiger Thorn stopped Brown Thorn and said, "No need, Brown Thorn. I'll go with Snake Thorn. There's no need for you to do anything." Tiger Thorn nodded in agreement. After the two of them left, Tiger Thorn looked at another extinguished light dot on his life watch and turned to look at Teresa, who was lying on the ground. Chapter 65. The dark sky, the dense forest, and the hidden danger. Another 2 hours had passed, and the dense forest still looked as quiet as before. But when you actually walked in, you would realize that it was not the case. The number of excited flying ants grew, and Scylla no longer needed to search for their nest. They would naturally transmit this excitement and cause even more flying ants to become active. Tiger Thorn sat next to Teresa and stared at the biomonitor in his hand without saying a word. Brown Thorn grew a little restless and moved closer to look at the light dots on the biomonitor. There were a total of 13 people who came to 7 lights for this operation. Including Brown Thorn and Tiger Thorn, all 13 light dots were originally on the biomonitor, but now 7, had already been extinguished. While Brown Thorn was looking at the biomonitor, another light dot had been extinguished. It looks like there are some crucial things that we really don't know. Tiger Thorn stared at the biomonitor and said, "How can a young master of the Duance family possess such skills?" Tiger Thorn pressed the sonic gun against Teresa's head. "You know, as long as I pull the trigger, those complicated nerves in your head will be thrown into chaos, and you yourself will die a very tragic death." Teresa raised her head and stared straight at Tiger Thorn. "I'm only responsible for contacting and conveying Aflon's intentions. I don't know anything else. I don't know anything about Duance Scylla's past at all." Tiger Thorn knew that Teresa was speaking the truth, but this sense of unknown about their target made Tiger Thorn very uncomfortable. In the past, they would always analyze their target before carrying out a mission to ensure that nothing would go wrong. But ever since they accepted the mission to assassinate Duance Scylla, everything had changed. The losses caused by all kinds of variables, the pressure from all sides, and those with ulterior motives eyeing them from the back had finally created Blackthorn's current situation. It was fake. False. All the information they had received about Scylla Duance back then was false. Aflon had begun his preparations more than 10 years ago, and all the information provided to them by their investors was false. Right now, they even felt that they had never understood this young master of the Duance family at all. The Blackthorn was about to disappear into the dust of history. Even if it wanted to rise again, it wouldn't be possible in a short period of time. Those people from the Duance family provided them with enough money and a sufficiently safe and hidden identity to avoid being hunted down by all parties, and the condition was that they had to kill Duance Scylla. While Tiger Thorn was deep in thought, 2 more light dots on the vital indicator went off. Brown Thorn could not help but look at Snake Thorn. "I'll contact Golden Thorn." Gold Thorn was the one who stopped Brown Thorn and entered the forest with Snake Thorn. Generally speaking, unless it was an extremely urgent matter, the commander would not easily contact the operatives because the electromagnetic waves of the receiver could expose them. Unless the operatives felt safe and took the initiative to contact the commander. But now, looking at the constantly extinguishing light spots, Brown Thorn could no longer sit still. Tiger Thorn did not say anything, which meant that he was giving his tacit approval. Brown Thorn took out his communicator. This was a communicator specially prepared for their internal personnel, and its signal coverage was set to only cover this area. It would not be received through satellites, nor would it use any other signal reception equipment in 7 lights. However, there was no response from Gold Thorn's communicator. Contact Snake Thorn. Right now, Tiger Thorn had an especially bad feeling. Perhaps the other party's movements were much faster than they had imagined. His vital indicator had not disappeared, but why? Unlike Golden Thorn, Snake Thorn's communicator was connected very quickly. What on earth happened? Brown Thorn asked urgently. Be careful, Snake Thorn only managed to utter 2 words before he went silent. Tiger Thorn glanced at the life indicator on his hand. The dot representing Snake Thorn was still lit up, proving that Snake Thorn was still alive. However, he could not make a single sound. Just what in the world had happened? Snake Thorn. Snake Thorn. Brown Thorn shouted twice more, but there was still no response from Snake Thorn. However, there was a blurry splashing sound that sounded like flowing liquid coming from the communicator. Snake Thorn really wanted to tell Tiger Thorn and Brown Thorn to be careful of the flying ants. His assassination skills might not be as good as Golden Thorn's, but his analysis of clues was better than Golden Thorn and Eagle Thorn's. When he arrived here, he had already noticed that something was wrong with the flying ants in the forest, but it was still too late in the end. The 3 needles on the back of his neck prevented Snake Thorn from making any sound at all. It was as if his reflexes had been cut off, rendering him immobile. The needles gradually merged into Snake Thorn's body. Snake Thorn felt all the blood in his body flowing in reverse. Blood was flowing out of his nostrils and mouth. The flying ants smelled the excitement factor in his blood and swarmed towards Snake Thorn's body. Snake Thorn's face, twisted from pain, was covered by the flying ants and could no longer be seen clearly. On Brown Thorn's side, there was an eerie silence. Even Teresa, who was lying there, felt a chill run down her spine. A gust of wind blew past, accompanied by the rustling of leaves. It was abnormally cold. After a moment of silence, clear and unhurried footsteps came from the communicator. Tiger Thorn snatched the communicator from Brown Thorn's hand and said in a deep voice, "Duan Silin, I know you're there." Beep. Before Tiger Thorn could finish his sentence, the communicator lost its connection. Although she couldn't see the face of the person on the other side of the communicator, Teresa felt that the current Silin was so calm that it was almost cold. Before this, Teresa was still confident that she held a certain amount of weight in Silin's heart. But from the looks of it now, Teresa suspected that if Tiger Thorn had placed her in front of him as a hostage, would Silin have opened fire without hesitation as well? Passive, too passive. Tiger Thorn and Brown Thorn felt at the same time that perhaps Duan Silin hadn't come here for Teresa at all. Perhaps Duan Silin's goal was the same as theirs, and that was to eliminate the other party. Perhaps. Of the 13 people, only the 2 of them were left now. Tiger Thorn grabbed Teresa's long hair and pulled her over. Brown Thorn understood and stood up to stand back to back with Tiger Thorn, vigilantly observing their surroundings. Keeping Teresa alive was their final shield. From the information given by that person from the Duan's family, Tiger Thorn knew that Aflan valued Teresa very much. No matter what, Duan Silin would still take her into consideration, at least a little. Right now, they had already noticed that the disadvantages of facing them in this forest were greater than the advantages. The dozen or so people before them had already been eliminated, so the chances of their covert assassination wouldn't be too high either. From the looks of it, they might as well come out in the open. An hour later, under Tiger Thorn and Brown Thorn's vigilance, the sound of footsteps gradually came from the distance. Brown Thorn didn't dare to act rashly. This person gave him too strange a feeling, and he didn't know if these clear footsteps were a trap of some sort. After all, no one would expose themselves so openly in a situation where they could be killed by the other party. Chapter 66. Tiger Thorn pressed his gun against Teresa's head and looked at the person who was slowly walking over. Brown Thorn's entire body was tense, and he was in a state of high alert. Duan Silen, you truly are a character. You forced us, Blackthorn, to this extent. Even death is a consolation. Silen did not react to Tigerthorn's words. His footsteps were still the same as before. Tigerthorn's gun was pressed against Teresa's head, hinting that if Silen walked any further, he would blow up this beautiful girl's head. Although it was night time, Tigerthorn could see the expression on Silen's face. This young kid looked too indifferent and calm, making it impossible to see through him. Silen stood still 50 meters away from Tigerthorn and the others. He looked at Teresa, then at Brownthorn and Tigerthorn. You want to kill her? Maybe it was because Silen's tone was too calm, but Teresa was a little afraid. Right now, she really could not see through Silen, and could not guess what Silen would do next. Or maybe it was because she did not dare to guess further. Seeing that Tigerthorn and Brownthorn were silent, Silen seemed to have just thought of something. Oh, you want to use her to threaten me? Silen's tone made Tigerthorn very uncomfortable. It was as if he had been slapped in the face. Your father, Aflon, values her very much. But you'll still kill her. If you can't do it, why don't I help you? Silen had just finished speaking when 3 needles flew straight out and shot towards Teresa, who was standing in front of Tigerthorn. Silen got up and retreated hastily at the same time the needles were shot. A bullet hole appeared almost as soon as he jumped away from his original spot. When Silen threw out the needles, Brownthorn, who had been watching him vigilantly all this time, opened fire without hesitation. However, Silen's movements were very fast. Silen practically brushed past 2 of the bullets and retreated into the forest with a few flashes. Brownthorn did not give chase. If he followed Silen inside, his fate would definitely be no different from Snakethorn and the others. After returning to Tigerthorn's side, Brownthorn looked at Teresa, who was no longer breathing after being flung to the ground by Tigerthorn. There were still traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. Seemingly in disbelief, Brownthorn checked Teresa's pulse and heartbeat before he said with a frown, "That kid is really ruthless. He is not a person who can be threatened." Tigerthorn stared at the spot where Silen had hidden himself in the forest and said in a low voice, "I don't think he looks like a rich young master. He looks more like a certain type of person. Killers like us? No, it's a hunter. No matter what kind of person he is, he must die." Previously, they wanted to use Teresa to lure Silen over, but they didn't expect Silen to kill Teresa the moment he saw her. There were only the 3 of them left in the forest. A chase was taking place in the forest. Tigerthorn and Brownthorn were afraid that Silen would lead them into a trap, so they would observe carefully every time they gave chase. They would only continue after confirming that there was no danger. However, Silen was too slippery. Every time they raised their guns, Silen would dodge as if he could sense it. Suddenly, Tigerthorn's alarm bells rang out. He abruptly exerted force with his foot on the ground, leaving a deep footprint where he stood as he dodged the incoming attacks. Just like Tigerthorn, Brownthorn also dodged and dodged. Needles were not the only things shooting at them. There were also bullets. What surprised Tigerthorn and Brownthorn was that the speed of these needles was actually about the same as bullets. At the same time, Tigerthorn also noticed something else. These needles were different from the ones used to kill Teresa. Tigerthorn's night vision was very good. He could clearly see the needles shattering when they pierced into trees or collided with rocks. Then, they would melt and evaporate. Poison. Tigerthorn held his breath and swiftly applied a layer of anti-poison film on his breathing mask. After seeing Tigerthorn's signal, Brownthorn also prepared to apply a layer of anti-poison film on his breathing mask. After all, it was not a specialized anti-poison mask. Although this kind of anti-poison film could protect against poison, it would affect one's breathing to a certain extent. A normal person might not be able to adapt to it, but Tigerthorn and Brownthorn could endure it for a very long time. However, they usually wouldn't use anti-poison films. However, just as Brownthorn took out the anti-poison film and was about to apply it, a bullet shot into his temple. Brownthorn was hiding behind a rock. The rock could block the enemy's shots, and he had blocked several shots just now. Almost 10 needles had collided with the rock, but he never imagined that he would be killed in one shot under such circumstances. A curved shot. Seeing all of this, Tiger Thorn immediately understood that the kid's previous shots were all intentional. His previous shots were all straight, but this shot was curved. Normally, this kind of person only existed in military academies. Why would such a person appear in Seven Lights? Tiger Thorn didn't have the time to think about these things. He was alone now, and he needed to focus all of his energy on guarding against that kid. Perhaps even Tiger Thorn himself did not know that the number one priority in his subconscious mind was no longer to kill Silen, but to guard against him. Strangely, Silen didn't move at all, and he quieted down after firing a shot. Then, Tiger Thorn saw a shocking scene. A large swarm of flying ants flew towards him and landed on the already dead Brown Thorn's body. They especially landed on the bleeding areas, forming a black mass. This was indeed a psychological blow to Tiger Thorn, and it was also at this moment that a dozen or so needles shot towards him. Tiger Thorn dodged to the side, but in the next moment, a figure swiftly arrived. Tiger Thorn's speed wasn't slow either. He raised his gun. Crack! The gun barrel was twisted like a fried dough twist, and at the same time, a needle pierced into Tiger Thorn's heart. Before he died, Tiger Thorn suddenly thought of something. From the moment he met Silen until now, even when Silen fired at them, he didn't have the slightest murderous intent. Moreover, Silen wasn't wearing a camouflage suit, and yet the infrared detection didn't detect anything out of the ordinary. Silen Duance. This man was like a cold-blooded animal. Not only did he possess the coldness of a killer, he also possessed the blood of a cold-blooded animal. This was Tiger Thorn's evaluation of Silen before he died. But if Mo Hung knew that someone had such an evaluation of Silen, he would probably grab his weapon and throw it at him. His disciple wasn't a cold-blooded animal. Not cold at all. It was only after he looked at the biomonitor in Tiger Thorn's hands and finished off the last one and extinguished all the dots on the biomonitor, that Silen finally let out a sigh of relief. The half-life of the drug that excited the flying ants was 12 hours, and it would break down once the time was up. Therefore, he didn't have to worry too much, and no one would discover this drug even if they came to the woods in the future. Silen rejoiced that the true core members of Black Thorn had all been eliminated. If the ones here today were the true core assassins of Black Thorn, he wouldn't have been so lucky. Indeed, the strength of an organization that could occupy a certain position on the assassin leaderboard was absolutely not to be underestimated. Silen had felt it when he was dealing with Tiger Thorn and the others today. If it wasn't for Silen's trickery of using those flying ants, it would have been very difficult for him to achieve a good result today. Even if these people who weren't core members had this kind of strength, how strong would the core members be? How strong were the people who had killed the core members of Black Thorn? It wasn't just one person or a few people who had eliminated the core members of Black Thorn. It could have been another organization, a family's hidden hand, or an army. Silen would also encounter these forces when he returned to the 6th team in the future. He loosened his shoulders. His arms were sore from swinging bullets and needles today. After cleaning up the various traces of battle, Silen walked over to Teresa's side. If he didn't go over now, she would probably really be dead. Chapter 67. Speaking of which, when Knight woke up from holding back his pee in the morning, he immediately felt that his stomach was empty. He went to the storage cabinet in the kitchen and took a look. There was nothing else there other than a few lonely pieces of bread. Knight scratched his head. He remembered that Silen said he was going out for a stroll last night to buy some food. Why was it still empty? Silen, Knight roared at the top of his lungs. No response. He ran to Silen's bedroom and study. No one there. He dialed his communicator. No one answered. Left with no choice, Knight used GPS to track Silen's communicator. However, the signal showed that he was in Silen's bedroom. Silen's communicator was placed inside the bedside table. Knight looked at the time. There were still 3 hours until their next match. On the other side, Teresa saw a dark gold color when she opened her eyes. There was even a string of flashing numbers on it. Beside the numbers was a knife-shaped symbol. The receipt of the Vanguard Hunter Group. The receipt was given to Silen by Schotten when he left the 6th team. The thought that Schotten had instilled into Silen was this: we're hunters. We can't work, sweat without any money, can we? Moreover, people like Aflon wouldn't care about some small money. Therefore, he couldn't hide the receipt when he could, and couldn't retract his knife when he could. A hunter should treat themselves a little better, and be a little more ruthless to their investors. This time, he had helped Aflon solve a huge problem, and even saved Teresa's life. He had to ask for a bit more reward no matter what. Silen didn't hold back at all. He directly wrote an 8-digit number on the receipt. No one would be able to detect a fake death unless they used a sophisticated life detector. The reason Silen shot the needle at Teresa was to fake her death. Only then would he be able to save Teresa, and most importantly, he wouldn't be tied down by his own hands and feet. Moreover, if Teresa died, Aflon definitely wouldn't pay much. When Teresa woke up, she didn't say anything about the number on the bill. She just looked at Silen with a complicated expression. Truth be told, when Silen walked out with a calm and indifferent expression as if he didn't care about anything, Teresa didn't expect Silen to care about her life at all. Sometimes, a hunter was very similar to an assassin. They were ruthless, cold, and merciless. Moreover, when Silen said to Tiger Thorn and Brown Thorn, "Why don't I help you?" Teresa felt her entire body turn ice cold. The moment she lost consciousness after being stabbed by the needles Silen flung at her, Teresa felt despair. Teresa realized that she had been underestimating this person who was even younger than her. The look in Silen's eyes made Teresa feel as if Silen knew everything, but she wasn't sure. After all, there were only 5 people who knew the secret, and those 5 people would never reveal it unless it was the right time. "How much do you know?" "This is all I know." Silen pointed at the dazzling bill in front of Teresa. "Remember to transfer it to your account in time. Of course, if you want to thank me more, I won't refuse." Putting away the bill, Teresa tried to stand up, but she was still a little dizzy. She could only sit back down. "What on earth happened?" Teresa asked. Silen did not answer the question directly and said, "You still need some time to recover. I believe you can contact someone to take you back. If that's the case, I won't stay any longer." "Wait a minute," Teresa called out to Silen, who was about to turn around and leave. "Those people are all dead?" Silen nodded. Teresa took a deep breath and calmed her emotions. "Since those people are all dead, Mr. Aflon's side will speed up his actions. Therefore, you need to be prepared in advance." He knew what Teresa meant when she said to be prepared in advance, so he made a "understood" gesture before disappearing into the forest in a flash. When Silen returned to the dormitory, Knight was talking to Ci Jincheng and Lung on the communicator to discuss countermeasures. "Silen, did you go for a stroll to another planet?" Knight rushed up and grabbed Silen by the collar and roared. However, his expression softened a little when he saw the bag in Silen's hands. Silen had gone to the supermarket to buy food on his way back. It looked like this was the right decision. "Silen, if you still don't come back, I'm going to send people to search for you. We need to discuss our strategy and bet an hour before the match," Lung urged from the other side of the communicator. That being said, Silen knew that Lung, Ci Jincheng, and Knight were truly concerned about him. Smiling, Silen said, "Bet on one-hit kill for the next match." Lung's eyes lit up when he heard this. Their opponents this time were the last tournament's champions, the Visby brothers. The odds must be shocking. Knight rubbed his chin. "It's going to be very difficult." "Alright, look at that grin on your face." On the communicator's display panel, Ci Jincheng's face was full of disdain. "Oh, right. Silen, do you want to become the champion of the double combat tournament?" Knight looked at Sillin. I don't want to, but if you want to take it, you can take it. Ha, good, you're a brother. I'm relieved to hear that. The reason I'm participating in the double combat tournament is to avenge a friend and teach the Visby brothers a lesson. I don't want to fight anymore after I beat the Visby brothers. His father had already given him a hard time when he participated in this tournament. If he continued to fight, Knight might get beaten up by his father when he got back. In his father's words, the thunderstorm fist was not meant to be played around. It lived on the battlefield, not these childish games that were purely for the sake of attracting students. The students who were treated as secret weapons of the military academies would not participate in these tournaments. That was because they were busy with missions and could already be considered as warriors. They had no interest in the little games between students, and even if they participated, they would not use their full strength. Exposing their true strength to the public was even more disadvantageous to them. Alright. This was for the best. Sillin still had to prepare for the aftermath, and ending it earlier would save him some time. Sigh, I wonder how much resentment those who went after Shadow X will feel. Lung sighed sadly on the other side. Lung, remember to bet again. Maybe, you'll break a new record. C.I. Jincheng said. Since he returned earlier than expected, Sillin deleted the messages and traces in his answering machine and took a short nap. Then, he logged onto the Sector Championships platform with Knight. Knight and the other two did not ask what Sillin had been up to during the night. Even if Sillin did not say, they had already guessed some of it. Just as C.I. Jincheng had said, the match against the Visby brothers after that had broken the record of the top 16. This match was very short, even shorter than the previous match against Lu Yewu and one smile kill. Instant kill. The moment the system displayed the start of the match, Sillin and Knight immediately moved. Their movements were so fast that the Visby brothers could only block them without being able to dodge in time. The violent lightning created by Knight's fists had already rendered one of them unable to fight. The other person facing Sillin did not feel good either. It was as if he had crashed into a mechanical armor, instantly losing his ability to fight as well. At the same time the system displayed Knight and Shadow X duo wins, it also displayed the eye-catching cursor of this match's record-breaking. After a moment of silence, the students in front of their microcomputers were completely fired up. Instant kill, it was actually an instant kill. But not long after their excitement, a piece of news pressed down on them like an iceberg. Knight and Shadow X had withdrawn from the double combat tournament. A lot of people came here for Shadow X, and without Shadow X, they lost half of their interest. Half an hour later, Kamas, Feng Haichao, Boer, Faradin, Ryan, Bon and other teams had withdrawn from the double combat tournament. This way, there really was nothing to see in the double combat tournament. Their boiling blood had been frozen, and the students were filled with resentment. The entire Sector Championship forum's layout was filled with thick resentment. Celine and the others didn't pay attention to the students' reactions. After Sillin and Knight had announced their withdrawal, Knight received a message from Kamas in his mailbox on the Sector Championship platform. As for Sillin's mailbox, there were a lot of messages, but Sillin basically did not bother to look at them. Sillin, Kamas and the others want to fight us in the final Integrated Warfare tournament. Knight was much more interested in Integrated Warfare, because Integrated Warfare was actual combat. Only the academies that entered the top 10 of the rankings could participate in the following practical combat tournament. However, with Seven Lights Foundation, entering the top 10 was not a problem at all. Sure, I look forward to it. Sillin did not refuse. The Integrated Warfare tournament was also a great opportunity for him. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.